Zeus, the king who devoured his father and stole the world before kings ruled kingdoms. Before the world even had a name. There was only chaos, a boundless void, no stars, no light, no gods, no laws, no time, just chaos. And from this void, something stirred. First came Gaia, the earth itself, ancient and living. And then Tartarus, the abyss below all things. Eros, the primeval force of desire. Nyx, the night. And Erebus, the darkness between worlds. But it was Gaia who bore the sky. Uranus. And it was their union that birthed the first true dynasty of power, the Titans. And so, the cycle began. Uranus was cruel. He hated his children, hated the way they crawled across Gaia's flesh, hated their power, hated their potential. So he buried them deep within their mother's body, trapping them beneath the earth. And Gaia, she cried out. Her screams rumbled through the roots of mountains, so she forged a weapon, a jagged sickle of divine adamantine, and offered it to her children. Only one stepped forward, Cronus, the boldest of the Titans, the hungry one. He lay in wait until Uranus descended upon Gaia again, and then he struck. The sky was castrated by the earth. The blood of Uranus spilled across the land, birthing the Furies, the giants, and in the sea, where the severed flesh fell, Aphrodite. Cronus had done the impossible, overthrown the sky itself. He took the throne of the cosmos, wearing it like a crown of inevitability. But prophecy clung to his back like a curse. One day, you too shall be overthrown. By your own child. He laughed, and then he swallowed each of them, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, whole, one by one, until only one remained. The last Sunria had grown tired of the taste of grief. As Cronus approached for the 6th time, she fled to the island of Crete, wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes, and handed it to her husband. He swallowed it, never noticing the deception. The real child, Zeus, was hidden away, suckled by a she-goat named Amalthea, and guarded by armored warriors who clanged their swords so loudly his cries would never be heard. This child, this god, would not be consumed. He would consume the poisoned cup-ears. Later, Zeus returned to the land of gods, no longer a child, but a storm disguised as a man, with cunning words. He served Cronus a cup laced with mustard and wine, an emetic so vile the Titan vomited up his children one by one, and they rose, reborn into the light, siblings of the sky, the first Olympians. But Cronus would not go quietly. Titans do not kneel. They war. The sky shook. Mountains shattered. The war between gods and titans, the Titanomachy, lasted 10 years. Thunder rained like hail. Giants tore trees from the earth and hurled them like spears. Poseidon's trident split mountains. Hades disappeared into the battlefield like a shadow, and Zeus cast bolts that split the world in half. But they were losing, so Gaia, ever the mother, revealed the secret. 3 monstrous sons of hers, born with 50 heads and 100 hands apiece, locked away in Tartarus by Cronus himself. Zeus freed them, and in gratitude, they gave him thunder. Not just sound, not just light, but the raw will of cosmic judgment, the bolt of law, the bolt of kingship. The Olympians rose, riding this power like a tidal wave of fire. The Titans fell, and Cronus, he was cast into Tartarus. The cycle had repeated, but it had also changed. The crown of Olympus, the 3 brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, drew lots to divide the world. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon, the sea, and Hades, the underworld, the earth. They agreed, would be neutral ground. But Zeus built a throne atop Mount Olympus, the highest peak in Greece, and declared himself king of gods and men. His reign had begun, and his rule would be anything but peaceful, the god of storms and shadows to the mortals below. Zeus was the sky, They prayed for rain. They begged for mercy during lightning storms. They feared the sound of thunder as if it were judgment itself. Zeus was not a god of gentle winds or passing clouds. He was a tempest, a force of nature, capable of creation or annihilation. He represented sovereignty, the archetypal father, the supreme authority that watches and punishes. But that authority came with contradictions, because Zeus was also deeply human. The hunger of Zeus, you see, the god who could not be swallowed by his father, would go on to consume the world in a different way. Zeus was insatiable. He lusted not just for power, but for women, mortal, immortal, it didn't matter. Leto, Semele, Alcmene, Dano, Europa. The list is as long as myth itself. Each union left a wake of chaos, and children who would shape the future. Apollo, Artemis, Dionysus, Heracles, Perseus. But his desire came at a cost. His marriage to Hera was a battlefield, a constant game of betrayal and revenge. She tried to kill his lovers. He disguised himself as animals, as humans, even as golden rain, just to reach them. The sky god lived in a storm of infidelity, obsession, and raw dominion, and yet he was worshipped. The cult of Zeus from Olympia to Dodona, his name echoed through temples. His statues rose like giants of marble, gazing down upon his worshippers. At the Dodona, priests interpreted his will through the rustling of sacred oak leaves. At Olympia, the Olympic Games were held in his honor, a celebration of physical excellence, as an offering to the god of strength and supremacy. Sacrifices were made. Oaths were sworn in his name, and whenever a man broke an oath, it was said that Zeus himself would strike them with a bolt from the sky. He wasn't just a king, he was order, but order or tyranny. Here's where the myth fractures into shadow, because Zeus was not a benevolent monarch. He was paranoid, he feared rebellion just as his father had. He crushed the giants in the Gigantomachy. He bound Prometheus to a rock for giving fire to mankind. He wiped humanity clean with a flood. He devoured Metis, the goddess of wisdom. After hearing she'd bear a child more powerful than him, swallowed her whole, just like Cronus once did to him. The cycle. Again, only this time, it would betray him. Because, from his own skull, torn open by Hephaestus, Athena was born, fully armored, fully divine, a goddess of war and intellect, a daughter that Zeus could neither control nor destroy. The esoteric, king on a deeper level. Zeus represents the superego, the lawgiver within the human psyche, the judge, the father figure whose gaze makes us obey. In tarot, he's the emperor structure, order, power, but also rigidity and dogma. He is the shadow of control, the terror of chaos tamed by tyranny. He represents the light of civilization, and the crackling fear of the storm. He is also Tamound. Unlike the Titans, Zeus doesn't embody eternity. He is the ruler of the current world order, the age of the Olympians. But just like Cronus, his time will pass, and he knows it. That's why he clings, why he punishes, why he thunders. But what you're about to hear changes everything, because Zeus wasn't always in control. He was challenged, tricked, outwitted even. Chained. In the next part of this chapter, you'll hear about the time Zeus was almost overthrown by his own wife, Hera, the time he was humiliated by mortals, the time he cried, and the time he disappeared from Olympus entirely. You won't believe what happens next. A throne shaken despite his divine strength and his thunderous aura. Even Zeus was not immune to rebellion. The Olympian order was not built on peace. It was a kingdom forged in war and maintained through fear. But fear is a double sword. The first who rise against him were not titans, nor monsters. They were family, his wife Hera, his brother Poseidon, his daughter Athena. The most powerful gods on Olympus plotted to chain the king of the gods, because they had grown tired tired of his rage, tired of his whims, tired of his endless lust that left Olympus in scandal. And so, they struck, while Zeus slept. Hera slipped a draught of enchanted sleep into his wine. Poseidon and Apollo bound him in unbreakable cords. The king of the gods lay helpless, bound in chains of magic and silence. But power has a strange way of shifting. When the other gods gathered to divide Olympus, the nymph Thetis called forth Briareus, one of the 100-handed giants who had helped Zeus in the Titanomachy, and Briareus owed him a favor with 50 arms at once. He unbound the king. Zeus rose with thunder in his blood, and he punished the rebels. Apollo and Poseidon were cast down to labor under King Laomedon of Troy, forced to build the great walls of the city that would one day fall in fire. As for Hera, she was suspended from the sky, bound in golden chains, with anvils tied to her feet. Her screams echoed across the cosmos, and the message was clear. No one chains the storm, the limits of power, but even gods falter. There came a day when the earth herself groaned, and gave birth to something terrible, Typho, and a monster so vast his head scraped the stars, eyes of fire, wings of endless night, each arm 100 serpents, the child of Gaia and Tartarus, born to end Zeus' reign, and he nearly did. When Typhon rose, the gods fled in terror. Many fled to Egypt, hiding among mortals as animals. Zeus alone stood to fight, but Typhon overpowered him, ripped the sinews from his hands and feet, trapped him in a cave. A god, helpless. It was Hermes who saved him. Quiet, clever, loyal, together they restored Zeus' power, and when the storm returned, it was apocalyptic. Zeus hurled 1,000 bolts, Typhon screamed, and the god of sky and order finally broke the chaos incarnate. He buried Typhon beneath Mount Etna, but Zeus was changed. He had tasted defeat. He had seen a future where he was dethroned, and from that moment, he ruled harder, Prometheus in the crime of compassion. But sometimes, Zeus' rage turned not against monsters, but those who dared to show kindness. Prometheus the titan who had sided with the gods, the bringer of fire, the architect of mankind, Zeus, ordered that humans must sacrifice to the gods. Prometheus tricked him, hiding bones under fat and meat under hide. Zeus chose wrong. Enraged, Zeus punished mankind. He took away fire. Prometheus stole it back, and for that, he paid. Chained to a mountain, an eagle sent to tear out his liver each day. It would grow back each night, an eternal cycle of pain. Divine revenge against compassion. But Prometheus had whispered a secret before his imprisonment, a prophecy. A child born of Zeus would one day destroy him, so Zeus swore never to sleep with the mother of that child, a woman named Thetis. He married her off to a mortal man instead, and from that union came Achilles, the greatest warrior Greece would ever know, a mortal, born to overthrow the immortal. The paranoia of Zeus had changed the fate of the world. The archetype of the king. Psychologically, Zeus is the father archetype, the towering figure in every myth, every religion, every inner world. He is the ruler, the judge, the punisher, and the provider. But within him lies contradiction. Zeus is law, yet he breaks oaths. He is fidelity, yet he betrays his queen. He is protector, yet he punishes those who protect. He is wisdom, yet he devours. He is the inner voice that tells us right from wrong, but sometimes lies down in Jungian psychology. Zeus reflects the inflated ego, the belief in one's own supremacy, the danger of absolute power, because power without humility is madness with a crown, and in that madness, we see the cycle of myth continue. Symbols of Zeus rules the sky, but his true power is authority. His thunderbolt is not just a weapon, it is divine judgment, swift, destructive, final. His eagle symbolizes sovereignty and foresight, the ability to rise above, to see all. The oak tree is his sacred plant, sturdy, ancient, unbending. The bull symbol of virility, but also brutality. Every symbol of Zeus carries double meaning, power and responsibility, creation and destruction, vision and arrogance. His Roman counterpart, Jupiter, carried this same duality, worshipped as the highest deity, yet feared as a tyrant of storms. Worship and the cult of control temples to Zeus were the largest in Greece. The temple at Olympia stood colossal, a statue of Zeus so vast it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Crafted by Hephaestus, it showed Zeus seated on a throne, holding Nike victory in one hand, a scepter in the other. People came from across the known world to honor him. Sacrifices were made, oaths were sworn. But the most sacred was the Olympic Games, not merely a sport, but a ritual of devotion. Athletes competed nude to reflect the ideal of the body. Victors were crowned not with gold, but with olive wreaths. For Zeus wanted glory, not wealth. And in Dodona, before Delphi became famous, his priestesses would interpret his voice in the wind rustling through oak leaves, a god whose presence was felt in the very breath of the earth. Legacy, in the modern mind today. Zeus lives on in metaphor. He is the man upstairs, the all-seeing eye, the CEO, the father figure, the judgment of the law. He's in Freud's superego. He's in the Tarot's emperor. He's in our fear of authority, and our need for it. He is what happens when freedom is sacrificed for order, when lightning becomes a throne. But Zeus was never eternal. In many myths, it is hinted that one day he too will fall, that a new order will come, one beyond Olympus. Even the gods are not safe from time, but until then, Zeus sits on his throne, watching, ruling, judging, devouring, and now, we turn to the queen, a goddess scorned, a wife betrayed, a storm that brewed not in the clouds, but in the heart. Hera, the woman who waged war on heaven, she was not born to be second. Before Olympus, before thrones, before men scrawled prayers onto stone, there was Hera, not the consort of Zeus, not the jealous wife, but a queen and elemental force, of womanhood, sovereignty, and vengeance. She ruled not with thunder, but with silence, not with a sword, but with oaths, and her domain. Marriage, childbirth, bloodlines, dynasties, the very fabric of civilization. But she was never meant to be a goddess of love. She was forged by betrayal, defined by wrath. The golden-blooded child Hera was the daughter of Cronus and Rhea, born during the reign of the Titans. Like her siblings, she was swallowed at birth, consumed by her father to prevent the prophecy of his downfall. Inside Cronus' belly, she waited, entombed in divine darkness, until her youngest brother, Zeus, returned to shatter their prison. Hera emerged into the light, not as a babe, but as a goddess, fully formed, timeless, immortal. She was born into a war, and she never forgot the taste of imprisonment. Even in her moments of triumph, that memory lingered, a scar she could never see, but always feel. A courtship of deception. They say Zeus fell in love with Hera the moment he saw her. But Zeus never just loved. He pursued, and Hera, she rejected him, time and time again. She would not be another name in his endless list of lovers. So Zeus did what Zeus always did. He lied. He transformed himself into a wounded cuckoo bird, small, pitiful, freezing in the rain. When Hera saw the helpless creature, her heart softened. She took it into her robe, held it to her breast, and in that moment, Zeus transformed back. He overpowered her, and then promised marriage, a union between sky and earth, thunder and silence. It was not the beginning of love, it was the beginning of war. The wedding of the century. All of nature rejoiced. The gods held the grandest feast Olympus had ever seen. Gaia gifted them a sacred tree of golden apples, which would later bloom in the garden of the Hesperides. The hoary goddesses of the seasons crowned Hera in fragrant blossoms. Even the fates sang, but this was no ordinary wedding. This was a binding of power. Hera's role was not ornamental. She was queen, divine, equal to the king. Her throne stood beside his, and it would always remain there. Even when their love turned to ash, the betrayal began. Zeus did not change. Despite his vows, he continued to seduce nymphs, goddesses, mortal women, even disguising himself to commit his affairs in secret. Leda Semele, Io Europa Dano Alcmene, each affair was a dagger in Hera's heart, but Hera did not cry. She plotted, she punished. Not Zeus, he was beyond her reach, but the women, and their children, Io. The cow of suffering was one of Hera's most faithful priestesses. That didn't stop Zeus from pursuing her. When Hera began to suspect, Zeus transformed Io into a white cow to hide her, but Hera saw through the lie. She demanded the gift of the cow, and Zeus, cornered, had no choice but to agree. Hera placed Io under the guard of Argus, a giant with 100 eyes, some always awake. But Zeus sent Hermes to kill Argus, freeing Io. Infuriated, Hera unleashed a gadfly to torment the girl, stinging her. Across continents. Io ran and ran across seas and rivers, her tears carving landmarks into the earth. She finally reached Egypt, where Zeus restored her human form. But Hera's scar remained forever. Semele, the mortal explosion, another of Zeus' lovers, another of Hera's targets. Hera disguised herself as an old woman and befriended Semele, who was pregnant with Zeus' child, with carefully planted seeds of doubt. Hera convinced her that her lover might not be divine at all. Semele demanded Zeus reveal his true form, and when he did, she burned alive in a flash of divine radiance. The unborn child, Dionysus, was sewn into Zeus' thigh. Hera had lost, but not forgotten. She would never forgive that child, or his mother, or his father, Hephaestus, the broken son, say. Hera gave birth to Hephaestus without a father, as revenge for Zeus' birthing Athena alone from his skull. But when she saw her son was born lame, she threw him off Mount Olympus. He crashed into the sea, bones shattered, skull bleeding. He would grow into the god of the forge, twisted, cunning, brilliant, and he would remember what his mother had done. This was Hera's love, a divine force, capable of terrifying tenderness and ruthless rejection. The psychology of Hera is the ultimate wounded queen archetype. She represents dignity, pride, tradition, but also jealousy, repression, and vengeance. She is the empress in tarot reversed, when motherhood turns to manipulation, when the wife becomes the warrior. In Jungian terms, she is the dark anima, the repressed feminine turned vindictive. She shows us that devotion, when betrayed, curdles into rage, that oaths, when broken, become blades, and that queenship, when denied respect, becomes war. But what you're about to hear is the full wrath of a goddess, because Hera didn't just punish women. She destroyed kingdoms. She brought entire bloodlines to ruin. And in part 2, you'll see how she tore through the lives of Heracles, Troy, and the very children of Zeus himself. The queen of the gods became a storm, and no one escaped her judgment. You can betray a goddess, but you cannot escape her. In the heavens, Hera was called queen. On earth, she was known by another name, Nemesis. To be touched by Zeus was to be hunted by Hera. To bear his child was to paint a target on your back. But those children were not mere mortals. They were demigods, heroes, titans of myth and legend, and Hera hated them all. Heracles, the war that lasted a lifetime from the moment he was born. Hera sought his death. His name was Heracles, meaning glory of Hera. A cruel irony. He was the son of Alcmene, a mortal woman, and Zeus. Hera's rage began in the womb. She delayed his birth, so another child, Eurystheus would be born first and claim kingship over Heracles. Then, she sent 2 serpents into his cradle. The infant Heracles strangled them both with his bare hands. But Hera was just getting started. She waited, watching, until he was a grown man, a husband, a father. Then she struck. She clouded his mind with madness. Heracles, in a blind frenzy, murdered his wife and children, and when the fog lifted, and he saw what he'd done, he fell to his knees and wept to atone. He was sentenced to perform 12 labors, each more impossible than the last, and behind each task, pulling strings in the shadows, was Hera. She made the Hydra's blood poison. She sent the Stymphalian birds to tear flesh. She set the Amazons upon him. She drove him to the edge of the world to steal golden apples. She turned his atonement into torture, and still, he endured. But Heracles' story did not end in tragedy. After death, he was granted godhood. And where did he go? To Olympus, to Hera's halls. And there, she accepted him, not out of forgiveness, but out of exhaustion, or perhaps respect, because even gods tire of war, even queens eventually lower their spears. The curse of Troy, but Hera's wrath didn't only fall on individuals. Sometimes, she destroyed civilizations. The city of Troy was once one of the greatest powers of the ancient world. Its walls were said to be unbreakable, built by gods themselves. But Troy had a secret enemy, Hera. It began with a golden apple, at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Eris, the goddess of discord, was not invited. In retaliation, she threw a golden apple into the feast. It read, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses reached for it, Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera. To settle the dispute, Zeus appointed a mortal shepherd from Troy to judge. Paris. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Athena promised wisdom and war victory. Hera promised power and kingship over all men. Aphrodite, she promised him love, specifically, the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite, and so, Hera vowed vengeance, not just on Paris, but on all of Troy. When the Trojan War erupted, Hera stood beside the Greeks. She orchestrated battles, sent plagues, manipulated kings, and when Troy finally burned, Hera smiled. A queen never forgets. The birth of Hephaestus revisited. There's another story, a quieter one. Some myths say that Hera, angry that Zeus had given birth to Athena without her, decided to birth a child on her own, parthenogenetically. The result? Hephaestus. But when she saw his twisted leg, she hurled him from Olympus. He fell for an entire day, landed in the sea, broken, alone. Hephaestus would later exact revenge by crafting a golden throne for her, one that trapped her the moment she sat. She begged Zeus for help, and Zeus, amused, brought Hephaestus back to Olympus in exchange for her freedom. The crippled god became divine smith to the heavens. But Hera, she never apologized. She was a goddess of justice, but not of mercy. The sacred queen, despite her rage, Hera was not simply a force of cruelty. She was the protector of marriage. Her temples were among the oldest in Greece. At Samos, Argos, and Paestum, her cult flourished. Brides sacrificed to her. Newlyweds prayed at her altars. Women gave her their hair during rites of passage, an offering of transformation. She presided over sacred unions, childbirth, fidelity to the Greeks. She was not a gentle goddess, but she was sacred and feared and honored. The esoteric shadow of Heran, esoteric tradition. Hera represents the divine feminine wounded by betrayal. She is the high priestess, inverted intuition turned to paranoia. She is the queen of swords, rational, cold, calculating. In astrology, her archetype is echoed in Juno, the asteroid, associated with long-term partnerships and karmic contracts. Her wrath is not random. It is law violated, a broken oath made flesh, a shadow that asks, what happens when sacred contracts are broken? What do we become when we are betrayed? Hera is the answer. Modern parallels today. Hera lives in myth and metaphor. She is the embittered wife in every soap opera, the vengeful queen in every fantasy, the scorned partner in every courtroom drama. She is cautionary, but also resilient. She endures where others perish. She stays when others flee, because Hera does not give up, not on herself, not on her throne, not on her vengeance. And now, you've seen the king, you've seen the queen, but what of the world they built? A world forged not on land, but in salt, dark, cold, endless, a kingdom that crashes, devours, and drowns. Next, Chapter 3, Poseidon, the god who built kingdoms beneath the waves. Beneath the still surface of the sea, something ancient stirs. Not all thrones are built in the sky. Some are forged in the dark silence below, in caverns lined with coral and bone, in palaces of obsidian and salt, where sunlight dies and old gods dream. This is where Poseidon rules, brother of Zeus, lord of the sea, wielder of the trident, maker of earthquakes, father of monsters. But before he was a god, before he carved the ocean into his domain, he was a boy. Swallowed whole, a prison of flesh like his siblings, Poseidon was born into darkness, consumed by Cronus at birth, held in the living tomb of his father's belly. There, he waited, silent, crushed between eternity and time, until Zeus returned, with poison in his hand and vengeance in his heart. Poseidon was vomited back into the world, drenched in bile, reborn in lightning, and he rose with fury. When the war against the Titans broke out, Poseidon fought beside his brothers, commanding the waves as weapons, splitting mountains with his wrath. He fought for freedom, but when the Titans fell, and the spoils of the cosmos were divided, he did not take the sky, he did not take the underworld, he chose the abyss. The deep crown. Poseidon's kingdom was vast. It covered 2/3 of the world. His palace stood at the bottom of the Aegean Sea, crafted of gold and gems and sea glass, more ancient than any structure on land. His subjects were not just dolphins and fish, they were tritons, sea nereids, hippocamps, sirens, and leviathans, creatures of forgotten shape and unfathomable size. Poseidon ruled not with law, but with presence. When he moved, waves bowed. When he shouted, storms answered. When he struck the earth with his trident, the world broke. They called him Earthshaker, and they prayed he would not notice them. The rage of the sea. Poseidon was not a god of gentle tides or calm shores. He was the storm. He was the tsunami that consumed villages without warning. He was the earthquake that split temples in half. He was rage incarnate, quick to fury, slow to forgive. When mortals failed to offer him sacrifice, he didn't send plagues, he flooded cities. When kings slighted him, he didn't write laws, he cracked the land itself. He did not rule with justice, but with raw power. Even the other gods feared his temper. The contest of Athens, but Poseidon's pride was deeper than the sea, and it would be wounded forever. There was a city, unnamed, young, full of promise. Poseidon wanted it for himself. He struck the ground with his trident, and a spring erupted, a gift to the people. But the water was salt. Then came Athena. She touched the soil and made the first olive tree grow, a symbol of peace, nourishment, and civilization. The people chose her. Poseidon lost. He did not forgive. He never forgot. From that moment on, Poseidon and Athena became eternal rivals, god against goddess, sea against wisdom, the storm against the mind, demands of a god. Poseidon's cruelty wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was creative. King Minos of Crete once asked Poseidon for a sign to prove his right to rule. Poseidon sent a majestic white bull from the sea, powerful, divine, untouchable. Minos was supposed to sacrifice it in honor, but he didn't. He kept the bull for himself. Poseidon saw the betrayal, so he cursed Minos' wife, Pasiphae, with an unnatural desire. She fell in love with the bull, and from their union, the Minotaur was born half man, half beast, and hidden in the labyrinth beneath. Knossos. Poseidon doesn't need to kill you. He just makes you live with the monster. The father of monster. Poseidon's bloodline is not noble. It is terrifying. He fathered Polyphemus, the one-eyed Cyclops. He sired Charybdis, the sea whirlpool that swallows ships whole. He created the horses, and then gave birth to Pegasus, the winged stallion, from the neck of Medusa, after she was slain. Yes, Medusa, once a priestess in Athena's temple, was violated by Poseidon, and cursed by Athena. Not him. She paid the price. He walked away. This is the darkness of the old gods, not just what they do, but what they are allowed to get away with. The psychology of Poseidon. Poseidon is raw emotion, the ID in Freudian psychology. He is instinct, hunger, desire, rage, ego, without restraint. He represents the ocean of the subconscious, the realm of repressed feelings, trauma, lust, and chaos. In tarot, he is the tower reversed, destruction, not as punishment, but as cleansing. He tears down what is false, what is fragile. Poseidon teaches us that beneath the calm surface of our lives lies a sea of unprocessed fury, and sometimes the sea rises. Esoteric archetype. Poseidon is water in its most terrifying form. In alchemy, water represents emotion, intuition, and transformation. In astrology, Poseidon resonates with Neptune, the planet of illusion, dreams, and delusion. He is the sea king, the ruler of moods, of madness, of inspiration that comes like a wave and drowns everything in its path. He is also the father wound, the deep, unspoken rage at being unseen. He was never chosen as king, so he punishes the world for it. But what you're about to hear will change your image of the sea god forever. Because Poseidon didn't just strike the earth with storms. He tried to overthrow Olympus itself, and he failed. In part 2, we'll uncover the rebellion Poseidon launched, the strange alliances he made, the humiliation he suffered, and how he was forced to build brick by brick the walls of Troy as punishment. The sea has no memory, but it has revenge. He ruled the sea, but wanted the sky. Poseidon was not content with his underwater empire. He had watched Zeus grow fat on praise, crowned with thunder and draped in glory. He had watched mortals raise temples to the king of Olympus, while offerings of salt and fish rotted at the edge of the tide, and Poseidon's pride, tidal and surging, could bear it no longer. So he rebelled, not with armies, but with family. The coup on Olympus began in whispers. Hera, long humiliated by Zeus' endless affairs. Athena, brilliant and prideful, tired of her father's tyranny. Apollo, young and bold, lured by the dream of a new order. And Poseidon, the storm beneath the throne. Together, they plotted to dethrone Zeus. While he slept, they chained him to his bed, each cuff forged by Hephaestus, each knot infused with magic. The king of the gods. Helpless, they tried to proclaim a new era, but no one dared take the throne. Zeus's presence lingered, even in bondage. And then came Thetis, the sea nymph, mother of Achilles, and once beloved by Zeus. She summoned Briareus, the hundred-handed giant who owed Zeus his freedom from Tartarus. Briareus shattered the chains. Zeus rose in a rage so deep, the sky itself trembled. Retribution. Zeus could have ended them all. Instead, he made them suffer. Apollo and Poseidon were cast down to the mortal realm, ordered to serve a human king, Laomedon of Troy, for an entire year. Not as gods, as slaves. They were tasked with building walls for the city, unbreakable, divine, massive, and they, did Laomedon, arrogant and foolish, refused to pay them. Poseidon responded the way only Poseidon could. He summoned a sea monster, a leviathan, and unleashed it on Troy's coast. Floods came, the people starved, crops drowned. The gods may build, but they also destroy. Walls of blood. The walls Poseidon helped build would become legendary. During the Trojan War, they would withstand the siege of the greatest heroes Greece had ever known. But Poseidon never forgot his humiliation, that his hands forged to wield storms were once used to carry stone. He hated Troy. He hated Laomedon. And when the war came, Poseidon stood with the Greeks, not for honor, not for destiny, but for revenge. The scorn of Odysseus after Troy burned. One man angered Poseidon more than any other, Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, who blinded Polyphemus, Poseidon's son, a giant cyclops. On his journey home, Odysseus did not pray. He did not apologize. He mocked, and Poseidon vowed that he would never see home again. So began the Odyssey. 10 years of torment. Storms tore his ships apart. Monsters hunted him. His crew was drowned. One by one, he was driven to the ends of the world, into the arms of witches and sea-goddesses. And when he finally returned, it was as a beggar, a king humbled. Poseidon's vengeance was absolute, not in violence, but in delay, because time is the cruelest punishment of all. The symbolism of the sea ocean is not evil, but it is indifferent, and Poseidon embodies that. He is not a villain, he is not a savior, he is the tide. He gives sailors smooth passage. He swallows entire fleets without warning. He brings fish to the net. He sends whirlpools to drag them under. He represents the primal force that does not care who you are, only that you are in his domain, and his domain is vast. Temples and cults. Poseidon was widely worshipped in coastal cities, especially in Corinth, Delphi, and Cape Sunion, where a temple still overlooks the Aegean Sea, like a watchful eye. Sailors offered bulls drowned in the sea as sacrifice. Earthquake victims built shrines and offered horses, Poseidon's sacred animal, in hopes of calming the god's wrath. Charioteers praised him before battle, as he was also the god of horses and racing. But no cult trusted him. He was worshipped not out of love, but fear. To anger Poseidon was to risk everything. Father of civilizations and beasts. Poseidon's children were many, some noble, some horrific. Theseus, the hero of Athens, who slayed the Minotaur. Triton, the merman who carried his father's conchant voice. Chrysaor, the golden warrior born of Medusa's blood. Bellerophon, rider of Pegasus, but others. Scylla, the sea hag, who devoured sailors. Antaeus, the invincible giant, who drew strength from the earth. Cyclopes, monstrous and solitary. Poseidon gave birth to civilization and chaos alike, because he is not the god of goodness. He is the god of wild power. The inner ocean. Psychologically, Poseidon represents emotion without filter. He is the tantrum, the heartbreak, the swell of inspiration that becomes obsession. He is what we feel when we are abandoned, when we are not chosen. He is the storm behind the smile, in shadow work. He is the repressed grief that erupts in rage, the inner child crying for recognition. And like the sea, he cannot be caged. Poseidon. In modern culture today, Poseidon remains the most recognizable sea god. In literature, he appears as the stoic force of the unknown, in Melville's Moby Dick, in Homer's Odyssey, in Percy Jackson. In psychology, he represents the father you can't please, distant, overwhelming, capable of sudden fury. In dreams, water often symbolizes emotion, and Poseidon is the one who controls it. He is every wave that drags you down, every current that carries you off course, every storm that reveals what you really are. When the masks are stripped away, now, the tide recedes, the sea returns to silence, but from the soil, another goddess rises, one with wheat in her hair and vengeance in her heart, a mother who lost her daughter and nearly destroyed the world too. Get her back. Next. Chapter 4. Demeter, the earth that went cold. Before men built temples, they sowed seeds. Before thunder ruled the skies, before mortals raised cities to Athena or spilled blood for Ares, there was Demeter, and she gave them life, not with fire, not with war, but with grain, a single stalk of wheat, a whisper of spring, the slow birth of civilization. Yet even the kindest goddess can become wrathful. Even the earth itself can go barren. All it took was the loss of a daughter. The mother of earth, Demeter, was one of the first Olympians' daughter, of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed, freed, reborn. But unlike her siblings, Demeter did not chase power. She chose to walk among mortals, not as a queen, but as a giver. She taught them to till the soil. She showed them when to plant and when to harvest. She gave them barley and wheat, corn and rye, to honor her. Humanity built the first altars not in gold, but in grain. She was the reason people settled, built homes, founded villages. Without Demeter, there was no bread, no firelit hearth, family, but even gods can bleed. Persephone, the core of her world. Demeter had a daughter, Persephone, her only child, her soul made flesh. The blossom of spring. Together, they walked the meadows of the mortal world. Together, they smiled, they danced, they sang. Demeter's love was absolute, unquestioned, and in time, unbearable, because where there is love that deep, there is terror of loss, and one day, that fear became real. The bloom and the abyssit was a simple moment. Persephone wandered through a field, chasing a rare flower, the narcissus, white and gold, blooming unnaturally. She reached down to pluck it, and the earth split open, with a roar like the end of the world. A chasm tore through the ground, and from it emerged Hades, god of the dead, lord of the underworld. He seized her, dragged her screaming into the abyss. The rift closed behind him, and the meadow fell silent. The earth grows. Cold Demeter heard her daughter's cry, but she was already gone. The sky had no answer. The wind offered no trail. Demeter searched for 9 days, without sleep, without food. She wandered the world in mortal form, cloaked in grief, disguised as a crone. She lit no fires, accepted no offerings, ignored every temple built in her name. When she learned the truth that Zeus himself had permitted the abduction, that he had offered Persephone to his brother as a bride, her grief became rage, and her gift became a curse. The first winter Demeter withdrew from the world. The crops died, fields turned to dust, rivers froze, animals starved, children withered, entire villages vanished. Spring did not come. Zeus begged, prayed, sent offerings. Demeter did not answer. The gods trembled. For what good was Olympus if no mortals survived to worship them? They had no choice. They sent Hermes to the underworld too. Bargain. The pomegranate seed. Hermes found Persephone on a throne of shadow. She was queen now, clothed in silence, crowned in iron, but still. Her eyes longed for the sun. Hades agreed to let her return to her mother, but before she left, he offered her a gift, a single seed of a pomegranate. She ate it, and in doing so, bound herself to the underworld. One seed, one bite, one eternity divided. For every seed she consumed, she would spend a month in the realm of the dead. She had eaten 6, and so Persephone would rise to her mother for 6 months of the year, and return to Hades for the other 6. The seasons are born. When Persephone returned, Demeter's joy lit the world. Snow melted, crops bloomed, life returned. But when her daughter descended again into the abyss, winter came. Thus, the seasons began, spring and summer. Demeter's joy, autumn and winter. Her mourning, the goddess of the harvest, became the mother of cycles, of birth, decay, and rebirth, of light and loss. The Eleusinian mysteries. From her suffering came a religion, the Eleusinian mysteries, held each year in Eleusis, near Athens. These secret rituals honored Demeter and Persephone. Initiates walked in silence by torchlight. They reenacted the abduction. They wept for Persephone, and then they rejoiced at her return. The mysteries promised not just fertility, but something greater. Hope that life does not end with death, that the soul returns, that even in the darkest winter, spring is waiting. The esoteric earth Demeter is more than a harvest goddess. She is Gaia tamed, earth in human form, civilization made fertile. She is the empress in tarot, abundance, nourishment, motherhood. But when wounded, she becomes the crone, the winter witch, the devourer of kings. In Jungian psychology, she represents the great mother archetype, nurturing, protective, but also possessive. She gives life and takes it back. Psychological symbolism. Persephone is the child self, innocence, joy, vulnerability. Hades is the unconscious, the realm of shadow. Demeter's grief is what we feel when we lose connection to that inner child. When Persephone is abducted, we fall into depression, into winter. When she returns, we heal. Demeter teaches us that healing is not linear, that grief has seasons, that even gods break. But what you're about to hear reveals a darker truth. Demeter's story is not just about loss, it's about control, possession, and what happens when a mother cannot let go. In part 2, we'll explore the psychological prison Persephone lived in, the mortal child Demeter, almost immortal, and the strange, disturbing rituals that honored her grief. Because when the earth turns cold, it doesn't just sleep, it remembers. The earth forgets nothing. You can hide a wound with snow. You can bury it in silence. You can let the trees grow over it, but eventually, it will bloom again. Persephone's prison. Most tellings of the myth focus on Persephone's abduction by Hades. But that's only half the tragedy. The other half is what Demeter did next. You see, when Persephone returned from the underworld, she was changed. No longer a child of flowers, but a queen of ghosts. And Demeter, she didn't accept it. She still saw a girl, not a woman, a daughter, not a sovereign. She wanted her Persephone back, exactly as she was. And so began a new war, not against Hades, but against change. The mortal child and the fire. During her long search for Persephone, Demeter wandered through the mortal world in disguise. She came to the house of King Celeus of Eleusis, where she was welcomed by his wife, Metanera. Demeter was asked to care for their newborn son, Demophon. She accepted, but she had a secret plan. Each night, Demeter would place the baby in the hearth, into the flames, and whisper divine words. She was not harming him. She was purifying him, burning away mortality, turning him immortal, like the gods. Until one night, the mother walked in. She screamed, and Demeter, enraged by the interruption, abandoned the ritual. She left the child changed, no longer mortal, not yet divine. A boy who would never grow whole. The truth beneath the wheat. This story, strange, haunting, is not about cruelty, it's about control. Demeter had lost her daughter to death, so she tried to make a new one that could never be taken. A child immune to the underworld. But even gods cannot stop loss. Even gods must let go. The tale of Demophon is a warning. When you try to preserve something forever, you don't protect it, you freeze it. You stop it from becoming what it was meant to be. Demeter's grief turned into obsession, and obsession turned into destruction. The shadow of the great mother Demeter is often seen as nurturing, but in shadow, she becomes possessive, controlling, all-consuming. In Jungian psychology, the devouring mother archetype emerges when a parent lives through the child, unable to release them into independence. That is Demeter's curse. She gives life, and then refuses to let it go, just as the earth clings to the last warmth of summer, even as winter comes. Persephone, queen of duality, while Demeter's worship dominated the mortal world. Persephone rose to power in silence. She was no longer just the maiden. She became Kore, the dual goddess. In the spring, she is the flower-crowned daughter. In the fall, she is Despoina, the feared queen of the dead. She walked both worlds, above and below. In doing so, she became more than Demeter ever intended. And that is the heartbreak of every parent. The child you raise will one day become a stranger. The Eleusinian mysteries unveiled. Few rites in the ancient world were as sacred or as secret as the Eleusinian mysteries. What we know is fragmentary, but chilling. Initiates fasted and bathed in the sea. They drank a potion called Kykeon, likely containing psychoactive barley. They walked in darkness. They watched plays reenacting Persephone's descent and return. At the climax, a blinding light was revealed. Some say it was a torch. Others say it was a vision, a glimpse of the soul's journey through death and back into life. For those who experienced it, the fear of death disappeared. Plato himself wrote, "Whoever has seen the mysteries will never fear death again." It was not just a ritual, it was a rebirth. Demeter's cult, and temples Demeter, was worshipped across Greece, especially in rural areas. Her greatest sanctuary stood at Eleusis, with a temple known as the Telesterion, where only initiates could enter. Offerings were humble: grains, cakes, honey, pigs, symbols of fertility. During the Thesmophoria, women fasted and gathered in secret to honor her, a ritual of death and renewal. Blood and soil, she was not a goddess of war or politics. She was the goddess of survival, of harvest, of hearth, the depth of her power. Demeter was not Olympus. She was older, more primal. She did not command thunder or the sea. She commanded growth itself. Without her, no god could be worshipped, no sacrifice made, no altar fed. She did not demand adoration. She demanded balance. Give, take, sow, reap. That is her law, and it is older than time. Modern echoes today. Demeter echoes in every garden. She is the mother who worries too much, the farmer who feels the soil before the sky, the parent who cannot accept that their child has grown. She is seasonal depression, the pain of losing someone and not being able to let go. But she is also the strength to keep planting, even when the ground is cold, because you believe. Spring will return now. The earth begins to thaw. Crocuses crack the frost. The sun rises earlier, and from the ashes of winter, a new figure descends, born from his mother's head, wielding reason as a blade, untouched by fear. Next, Chapter 5, Athena, the warrior born without a mother. She was born with armor, not a cry. No screams, no blood, no mother, just a splitting headache, and a crack in the king's skull. Then steel, she emerged fully grown, breastplate gleaming, spear raised, eyes sharp as judgment. And the gods trembled, because what they saw was not just a goddess, but an idea, the personification of wisdom as weapon, the union of thought and war, a mind that calculates like a god, and strikes like one to dot. This was Athena, and unlike any other Olympian, she had no birthright to chaos. She was born from order and from fear. The thought that became flesh Zeus had swallowed her mother, Metis. She was the titaness of wisdom, the whisperer of strategy, the calm voice before war. But the fates had warned, if Metis bore a son, he would surpass Zeus, so he devoured her. What he didn't know was that Metis was already pregnant. Inside him, she built a child, not of flesh, of strategy, of logic, of will. Until the pressure was too much. Zeus begged Hephaestus to split his skull open, and from the wound, Athena exploded in full battle gear, screaming like a hurricane, and smiling. The virgin strategist Athena is unlike any other Olympian. She is a virgin goddess, not in the sense of purity, but in the sense of independence. She answers to no lover. No child, no spouse, no god. She was born alone. She thinks alone. She fights alone. Athena represents the mind unchained by passion. She does not rage like Ares. She does not seduce like Aphrodite. She does not crave power like Zeus. She plans. She waits. And when she strikes, it is flawless. The goddess of civilization Athena is the goddess of war, but never for pleasure, only for justice. Wisdom, not as knowledge, but as application. Craftsmanship, from weaving to architecture. Cities, especially Athens, the cradle of democracy. She is the soul of the polis, the structured city-state, where reason replaces instinct, where the rule of law replaces the rule of blood. Her enemies are chaos and impulse. She is, in every way, the anti-Ares. The contest for Athens once, Poseidon and Athena both claimed a newborn city. The people called for a sign. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, and a spring burst forth. But it was salt water. Useless, Athena stepped forward and planted the olive tree. It gave food, oil, wood, sustainability, wisdom, peace. The people chose her. She became the patron of Athens and its soul. From that day, Poseidon despised her. And Athena. She watched, because every war begins with a wound and a grudge. The weaving of hubris. Athena's myths are not always glorious. They are precise, cold, like the sharp end of a lesson. There was a mortal girl named Arachne. She was the greatest weaver in the world, and she knew it. So, proud, she challenged Athena herself to a contest. They each wove a tapestry. Arachne's was flawless, but it mocked the gods. It showed their sins, their lust, their violence. Athena, seeing perfection used against Olympus, flew into a rage. She destroyed the girl's work, and then transformed her into a spider, condemned to weave forever. The Gorgons, curse, another tale darker. A priestess named Medusa served in Athena's temple. She was beautiful, devoted, but Poseidon violated her inside that sacred space. Athena, furious that her temple had been defiled, did not punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa. She turned her into a Gorgon, snake-haired, monstrous, deadly. One look, and men turned to stone. Athena does not forgive weakness. She does not protect the broken. She turns them into weapons. The warrior's heart. Athena has no love stories, no scandals, no heartbreak. Her greatest allies are Odysseus, the clever king, whom she guided through 10 years of torment with tricks, and whispers. Perseus, whom she armed to slay Medusa. Heracles, whom she advised in silence, without glory. She rarely appears directly in battle. Instead, she plants ideas. She is the voice in your head before the first blow lands. The calm mind amidst fire. The strategist who sees the ending before the war begins. The esoteric archetype in the tarot. Athena is the queen of swords, intellect over emotion, truth over delusion. She is the solar feminine, logic, independence, clarity, in Jungian terms. She is the animus within women, the masculine force of assertion, structure, and vision. She is not a mother, not a lover. She is the mentor, the archetype of detached guidance. But she also hides a shadow, perfectionism, rigidity, cold, judgment. She represents what happens when mind dominates heart, and emotion becomes weakness. The Parthenon and worship her greatest temple. The Parthenon still stands in Athens, an architectural hymn to reason. She was honored with festivals like the Panathenea, where poems, plays, and games were offered in her name. Her statues often show her in armor, helmeted, holding a shield, with Nika, the spirit of victory. Perched on her hand, Athena was not loved like Aphrodite. She was respected, feared, admired. Because you don't pray to Athena, you ask her to watch you work, and hope you're worthy. But what you're about to hear reveals the part of her she never shows. Athena was not just the goddess of wisdom. She was the protector of patriarchy, a woman who never sided with women, a mind so logical, it erased its own heart. In Part 2, we'll explore the trial of Orestes, the curse of motherhood she denied, and why Athena may be the most dangerous Olympian of all, because when logic serves power, no one is safe. Justice without empathy is tyranny in disguise. Athena is the patron of law, order, and reason. But beneath her statues of marble and temples of logic lies a chilling truth. She is the protector of systems, even when those systems crush the innocent, and when forced to choose between the voice of blood and the voice of law, she always chooses the latter. The trial of Orestes: a son kills his mother, a crime so foul, it curses the land. This is the story of Orestes, son of Agamemnon and with Lytom. After returning from the Trojan War, Agamemnon is murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra, in revenge for sacrificing their daughter, Eve. Orestes, enraged, takes his mother's life in return, an unholy crime. The Furies, ancient goddesses of vengeance, rise from the underworld to torment him. They demand justice, not excuses. So Orestes flees to Athens, to Athena. He begs for her judgment, and she creates the first court of law, 12 judges, a trial. The Furies argue for blood. Apollo defends Orestes. The votes are cast, they are tied, and Athena casts the final vote. She votes to acquit. The triumph of logic in this moment. Athena doesn't choose forgiveness, she chooses order. To her, a son's duty to avenge his father outweighs the horror of killing a mother. Emotion is secondary. Instinct is dismissed. She tells the Furies, "You are ancient, but I bring a new order." She offers them a place beneath Athens, not as monsters, but as protectors of justice. They become the Eumenides, the kindly ones, and so vengeance becomes law. But at what cost? The rejection of the feminine. Athena was born without a mother, and in many ways, she rejects motherhood entirely. She aligns herself with men, with fathers, with reason over nurture. She even claims, "I honor the male principle. I am wholly of the father." In doing so, she denies the cycles of birth and death, blood and emotion that define feminine power. She sides against women in mythology again and again. She punishes Medusa, not her rapist. She curses Arachne for daring to speak truth. She votes against Clytemnestra, despite the blood sacrificed. To Athena, the law is not merciful, it is exact. And so she becomes the machine of Olympus, the divine bureaucracy that calculates justice, but cannot feel it. Wisdom versus compassion. True wisdom is not just intellect, it's empathy, and that is where Athena's mask begins to crack. She can teach a man to build a city, but not how to forgive. She can show a general how to win a war, but not how to make peace with himself. She creates the system, but never suffers within it. And that is the tragedy of her archetype. She becomes the inhuman perfection that humans chase and break, trying to reach the shadow of the goddess. In esoteric terms, Athena is the solar feminine pushed to the extreme, detached, purely mental, in service to structure. She is the queen of swords, reversed intellect without compassion, the divine executive who executes plans, not feelings. In shadow work, Athena is the part of us that buries emotion beneath productivity, silences intuition for logic, judges others for being irrational while ignoring our own wounds. She is the voice that says, "Don't cry, be useful." But sometimes, healing begins with tears. The inner Athena, psychologically, Athena lives in the overachiever who never feels enough, the woman who climbs to the top by denying her femininity, the student who seeks praise, not understanding. She teaches us how to think. But if we're not careful, she also teaches us how to feel nothing. to put mind over matter, until the matter screams. Her legacy in the world, Athena's influence is eternal. Cities are named for her. Wars were fought under her banner. Statues still rise in her image, spear in hand, owl on shoulder, untouched by time. She is found in democracy, structured, rational, powerful. Academia, the pursuit of knowledge without emotional interference. Military strategy, precision, calculation, and cold execution. But she is also found in the glass ceiling, where women must act like men to succeed. The boardroom, where empathy is seen as weakness. The courtroom, where law forgets to listen. Athena remains respected, not loved. Feared, not embraced. Necessary, but incomplete. And now, her owl retreats. Night falls over the Acropolis. Logic bows to instinct, because the next god does not plan. He acts. He rides in a golden chariot, burns everything he touches, and demands you see him. Next, Chapter 6, Apollo, the light that blinds. He doesn't whisper, he radiates. Wherever Apollo walks, shadows disappear. He is the god of the sun, of prophecy, of music, of plague, of truth. But truth is not always a gift, because Apollo doesn't reveal gently. He strips away. He is beautiful beyond comprehension, golden hair, divine muscles, a gaze that pierces lies. But there is nothing soft about Apollo. His beauty is a weapon, his clarity, a curse. He is light without warmth, logic without empathy, perfection without permission. He wants you to know the truth, even if it destroys you. The birth of a Titan slayer, Apollo, was born of Leto, a Titaness. But Hera, jealous of her beauty and Zeus's lust, cursed her no land under the sun would allow her to give birth. So Leto wandered, swollen and suffering, until she found Delos, a floating island, neither land nor sea. There, under a swaying palm tree, she gave birth to twins, Artemis, the moon, Apollo, the sun. The moment he emerged, Apollo demanded a bow and a lyre. And by the end of his first day, he had killed a serpent. The slaying of Python. Python was a primordial serpent, a child of Gaia, and the guardian of the ancient Delphic oracle. But Apollo wanted the shrine, he wanted the truth, so he hunted Python to the slopes of Mount Parnassus. The serpent tried to flee into the caves, but Apollo was merciless. He fired 100 arrows, pinned it to stone, and watched it die. The earth screamed. Python's blood soaked into the soil. To atone, Apollo founded the Pythian Games, a sacred festival of arts and athletics. But the message was clear. This shrine is mine now, the oracle of Delphi, with Python gone. Apollo claimed the Delphic oracle, the most sacred site in the ancient world. Here, mortals came to ask questions, and the Pythia, his priestess, answered in riddles, crops, wars, love, fate, all answered by a woman inhaling vapors and channeling his fire. But Apollo's prophecies were never clear. They were truths wrapped in enigma, because even when he tells the truth, it is always half revealed. A mirror held to your soul, cracked and burning. God of plague and healing, Apollo is both healer and destroyer. In the Iliad, he rains plague arrows on the Greek army for dishonoring his priest. He strikes silently, from afar, but he is also the father of Asclepius, the god of medicine. Apollo gave him the knowledge to cure death itself. Zeus struck Asclepius down for it. No mortal may cheat death. Apollo's reaction, he killed the Cyclopes, who forged Zeus' lightning bolts. He was banished to earth for that. But again, the message was clear. I protect mine, and I punish those who overstep, even if they are gods. Apollo in music with his lyre. Apollo could calm storms, soothe madness, and seduce even stone. He challenged satyrs and mortals alike, and always won. But he had no patience for imperfect beauty. When the satyr Marsyas dared to compete with him in music, Apollo flayed him alive, stringing him up from a tree. Skin peeled from muscle. Art, for Apollo, was not expression, it was dominance. His songs were not emotional, they were mathematical. Symmetry, harmony, control. He defined perfection, and he despised chaos. His loves end in ruin. Apollo loved many, and each love ended in tragedy. Daphne, a nymph, fled his obsession. She begged her father to save her, and he turned her into a laurel tree. Apollo embraced her bark and made the laurel his sacred crown. Cassandra, princess of Troy, accepted his gift of prophecy, but rejected his body, so he cursed her too. Always speak the truth, but never be believed. Hyacinthus, a mortal boy Apollo adored, was struck in the head by a discus. Some say it was an accident. Others say Zephyrus, the jealous wind god, twisted the throw. Apollo wept over his corpse, and from his blood grew the hyacinth flower. Apollo's love is never tender. It is overwhelming, consuming. It is the sun, brilliant and fatal. The light that judges Apollo doesn't seduce like Aphrodite. He illuminates. He shows you the truth of yourself, even if it burns you. He is the god of clarity in a world that begs for comfort, but his clarity comes at a price. He will never lie to you. He will simply shine so brightly that your delusions wither. The esoteric sun Apollo is the solar masculine in its purest form. In tarot, he is the sun card, joy, clarity, success, and overexposure. In astrology, the sun reveals identity, your ego, your core. But every light casts a shadow, and Apollo's shadow is arrogance, intolerance, cold perfection. He cannot understand weakness. He has no patience for doubt. He expects you to rise or be burned. The archetype of enlightenment psychologically, Apollo represents the mind that seeks logic, structure, and moral purity, the pursuit of truth at the cost of emotion. The artist who destroys himself for perfection. He lives in the gifted child, crushed by pressure. The leader who never shows vulnerability. The genius who dies alone. Apollo demands the best from you, but offers no mercy when you fall short. His temples in worship. Delphi was his heart, a place where kings trembled before riddles. Pilgrims traveled for weeks to ask a single question. His priests fasted, cleansed, and spoke in fragments. But his cult was not emotional. It was discipline. You honored Apollo by mastering yourself, by becoming the clearest version of who you are, even if it cost you everything. But what you're about to hear breaks that image. Because for all his light, Apollo fears one thing. The moon, his twin sister, walks in silence, where he demands answers. She thrives in mystery, where he dominates. She disappears, and once they turned on each other. He touches nothing without changing it, and no one who loves him walks away unscarred. If Zeus is the king, and Poseidon the storm, then Apollo is the standard. He does not ask for devotion. He expects it. He commands it. And should you fall short, even by an inch, he will punish you with beauty and clarity sharp enough to cut through your soul. God of contradictions, Apollo is known as the god of reason, but also of prophecy, which defies logic. He is the sunlight that grows crops, and the same sunlight that burns the fields dry. He is the bringer of plague, striking armies down with invisible arrows, but also the bringer of healing, father of medicine itself. This is not a contradiction. It is a truth about power. The more brilliant the force, the more devastating its shadow. Apollo is duality made flesh, precision and devastation. One moment, he sings. The next, he silences the world. Cassandra, a gift turned to curse perhaps. The most haunting of Apollo's lovers was Cassandra, princess of Troy. He promised her the gift of prophecy, if she would lie with him. She accepted the gift, but refused him after, and so he cursed her, not by removing the gift, but by twisting it. She would still see the future, but no one would believe her. She screamed of Troy's fall. She begged for someone to stop the horse, but her voice was ignored. Apollo is not chaos, he is consequence. You made your choice. Now you live with the knowledge and the silence that follows. The song that killed Marsyas. Not every story of Apollo is wrapped in tragedy. Some are wrapped in cruelty. Marsyas, a satyr, found a flute once played by Athena. He mastered it. He played it so well, mortals whispered, he might be greater than Apollo. So Apollo challenged him to a contest. They played, and Mars played with passion. But Apollo played with perfection, and then he raised the stakes. Whoever wins can do whatever they want to the loser. Apollo won, and with godlike calm, he flayed Marsyas alive, peeling his skin from his body, hanging it on a tree. Why? Because to Apollo, art without structure is filth. Passion without control is dangerous, and those who defy the divine order must suffer. The hypermasculine, ideal Apollo, isn't just the god of the sun. He is the god of idealized masculinity, untouched, sculpted, dominant, invulnerable. He is what every man is told to become, and no man ever truly can. In modern terms, Apollo lives in the golden child who never cries, the CEO who never sleeps, the man who loves no one, because love is messy. He is performance, image, the shining surface with no cracks allowed, but no light can last forever, and behind every Apollonian figure is a shadow, waiting to devour him. The day the light faded, once fell in love with a mortal prince named Jacinthus. Their love was tender, pure. They played discus together in the meadows, but Zephyrus, the west wind, also loved the boy. Consumed with jealousy, he twisted Apollo's discus mid-flight. It smashed into Jacinthus' skull. He died in Apollo's arms. The god wept, not with divine rage, but with human agony. From Jacinthus' blood, Apollo made a flower, a gesture of grief and guilt, but nothing could bring him back. Even the sun cannot outshine death. The descent into mourning. For once, Apollo did not seek vengeance. He did not curse. He did not kill. He mourned, and that is the most terrifying aspect of Apollo, that even gods can experience grief. Even perfection can be shattered, and when it breaks, it makes something beautiful. The hyacinth became a symbol of mourning, of love, of remembrance, but also of Apollo's limit, because for all his power, he could not save the one he loved most. The esoteric solar power in esoteric and mystical traditions. Apollo represents the solar logos, divine reason, illumination, truth, but his shadow is always there, in the overthinker who never lets themselves feel, in the artist who destroys themselves for perfection, in the seer who knows the truth but is never heard, in tarot. Apollo aligns with both the sun, clarity, success, and the tower, because his truth often destroys illusions violently. In Jungian psychology, Apollo is the ego at its highest functioning, organized, moral, and rational, but also the ego, when it denies the unconscious, represses instincts, and fears emotion. He lives in our systems today. Apollo is everywhere, in universities that demand performance over learning, in legal systems where logic crushes compassion, in religions that preach order but forget love, in men and women afraid to cry, to be weak, to be real. He is the idol we build, and the mask we wear, but no mask can last forever. His twin, the shadow, he cannot kill. Apollo's greatest equal is his sister. Artemis. Where he shines, she hides. Where he speaks, she stalks. She is instinct, where he is reasoned. And once, only once, Apollo made the mistake of trying to outwit her. It cost him dearly, because while Apollo sees all, Artemis sees what lies beyond sight. She is the dark beneath his light, and she never forgets. Next. Chapter 7, Artemis, the virgin huntress, and the wild moon. She doesn't warn you. She draws the bow and lets the arrow fly. Where Apollo blinds with light, Artemis waits in the shadows. Where he seeks control, she craves freedom. She does not speak. She does not plead. She vanishes into the trees and watches, because Artemis is not a goddess of humans. She is a goddess despite them. She is the guardian of wild things, the protector of beasts and maidens, and the untouchable embodiment of feminine autonomy. She is the moon, cold, silver, distant, but she does not orbit anyone. She hunts alone. Born second, but not lesser, when Leto gave birth to twins first, Artemis, then Apollo, the labor nearly killed her. And it was Artemis, barely born, who helped deliver her brother. She entered the world with blood on her hands, but not her own. She saw suffering before she saw light. From that moment, Artemis became the goddess of childbirth, and the silent watcher of death, a strange paradox. She helps life begin, and knows exactly how to end it. The oath of eternal virginity, unlike other Olympians, Artemis chose solitude. She asked Zeus for 3 things: eternal virginity, a bow and arrows like her brothers, a group of nymphs to hunt with her. And she was granted all of them. She never married, never bore children, never shared herself with any man. This was not repression, it was sovereignty. Her virginity was not about purity, it was about power. No one would ever own her, not even a god. The man who looked too long one day, a hunter named Actaeon, stumbled upon Artemis as she bathed in a sacred glade. He did not speak, he did not touch, he merely saw her, and that was enough. Artemis, furious at being perceived, transformed him into a stag. His own hunting dogs tore him apart, not recognizing their master. His crime, not lust, not violence, just witnessing. Because Artemis exists beyond the gaze. She is freedom incarnate, and any attempt to observe her destroys you. The cold protection of the innocent Artemis is the protector of young girls, animals, forests. She blesses them, but her blessing is sharp. When the wind failed to rise for the Greek fleet at Aulis, the seer Calchas declared that Artemis had been offended. The only way to appease her, sacrifice a virgin, Iphigenia, daughter of Agamemnon. And so the girl was lured under false pretenses to be wed, and led to the altar. Just before the blade fell, Artemis intervened. She whisked Iphigenia away in a cloud of mist, and replaced her with a deer. A mercy, yes, but also a warning. Cross Artemis, and even kings will bleed. Twin to the sun, queen of the night, Artemis is not just Apollo's sister, she is his balance. Where Apollo represents reason, Artemis represents instinct. Where he shines truth, she cloaks it in silence. He builds temples, she builds boundaries. They are twins, not of harmony, but of tension. And when that tension snaps, the gods themselves suffer. The death of Orion, there are many versions of the story. In some, Orion was her companion, a mighty hunter, perhaps even her lover. In others, he dared to touch her nymphs. In one, he bragged that he would hunt every beast, an insult to the wild Artemis protects. In the end, Artemis killed him. Some say she placed him in the stars out of guilt. Others say it was Apollo who, fearing Artemis's love for Orion, tricked her into shooting him from afar. He pointed to a distant dot in the sea and dared her to hit it. She loosed her arrow and struck Orion through the heart. When the sea brought his body to shore, Artemis wept, for the only man she had ever loved, or nearly loved, and she placed him in the sky, a constellation of regret, the esoteric moon in mystical thought. Artemis is the lunar feminine, the high priestess in the tarot, mystery, intuition, hidden power, the wild anima, in Jungian psychology, feminine energy, unclaimed by society, fierce and untamed. She lives in the girl who walks alone at night without fear, the woman who says no and means it, the instinct that tells you when to run and when to strike. Artemis is not emotional. She is elemental. She is the whisper in the woods that says, "You are being watched." And if you're lucky, it's only the trees. Worship in the wild Artemis's temples were not like Apollo's. Hers stood at the edges of cities, of forests, of civilization. Her greatest sanctuary was at Ephesus, where she was worshipped in a form older than Olympus, as a many-breasted goddess of fertility and wildness. She was honored with dances, moonlit rituals, and secret rites. Her followers were not scholars. They were midwives, hunters, girls on the edge of womanhood. To worship Artemis was to let go of control and walk into the unknown. But what you're about to hear reveals her most terrifying aspect. Because Artemis may protect the innocent, but she does so with ruthless indifference. She blesses you with freedom, but dares you to survive it. And when her arrows fall, they never miss. Next, Chapter 7, Artemis, the Virgin Huntress and the Wild Moon, Part 2. She is the moment before the scream, the breath in the woods before the arrow flies. Most gods demand worship. Artemis demands distance. She offers no sermons, no speeches. Her temples are quiet, her cult secretive. She does not speak often, but when she does, it echoes through centuries. This is not a goddess you approach. This is a goddess you fearfully respect, because Artemis isn't trying to control you. She just wants you to know exactly what happens when you cross her boundary. The massacre at Calydon, the story of Artemis's vengeance, begins with a simple slight, a forgotten offering. The city of Calydon was blessed with abundance. Its king, Aeneas, gave offerings to every Olympian, except her, whether by accident or arrogance. He omitted Artemis, so she sent a punishment, a boar, not just any boar, a monstrous, tusked nightmare that tore through fields and flesh alike. It could not be killed. It would not be killed until Artemis allowed it. Heroes came from across Greece to slay the beast, including the great hunter, Atalanta, a woman raised by bears. She struck the first blow, and in that moment, Artemis smiled, because she wasn't punishing the city. She was reminding it, I do not need temples. I do not need songs. I just need you to remember that the wild always comes back. The paradox of the maiden Artemis is the goddess of virginity, but not in the sanitized sense. Her virginity is wild, feral, unowed. She chooses solitude, not chastity. She is not untouched because she's afraid of love. She is untouched because nothing touches her without permission. This is where many misunderstand her. She is not against sex. She is against possession, and in a world that defines women by who claims them, Artemis is the fire that burns that script. She is every woman who says, I do not belong to you. I belong to myself. The cold sister of compassionate like Hestia, who nurtures, or Demeter, who weeps for her daughter. Artemis does not show affection in a way mortals understand. She will not comfort you, but she will avenge you. If a nymph is harmed, Artemis strikes the offender down. No trial, no plea. If a girl is wronged, she will make the land suffer until justice is restored. But when it comes to grief, to love, to mourning, she hides. She runs back into the forest, because Artemis is not a mother. She is the blade that keeps others from becoming orphans. The fall of Callisto 1. Of Artemis's most faithful companions was Callisto, a virgin nymph who swore eternal loyalty. But Zeus desired her. He disguised himself as Artemis and violated her. Callisto, ashamed and pregnant, tried to hide it. But Artemis knew, and she banished her, not out of cruelty, but out of unbreakable law, the law of the hunt. No man may enter, even if the man was a god, even if the victim was blameless. Callisto gave birth. Hera turned her into a bear, and years later, her son nearly killed her during a hunt. not knowing the beast was his mother, to prevent the tragedy. Zeus cast them both into the sky. They became the Ursa Major and Minor stars. Frozen in exile, she does not forgive. She transforms. Artemis rarely punishes with words. She punishes with transformation. Actaeon becomes a stag. Callisto becomes a bear. Niobe's children become corpses. Because to Artemis, identity is fluid, mutable. Animalist. If you fail to respect the wild, you may become it, not metaphorically, literally. The night and the cycle. Esoterically, Artemis is the lunar cycle embodied. As the waxing moon, she is the maiden, new, wild, untamed. As the full moon, she is the hunter, complete, precise, lethal. As the waning moon, she is the crone, silent, distant, disappearing. She governs cycles of menstruation, rites of passage, thresholds between childhood and adulthood. She appears in dreams, in sudden feelings of being watched, in the instinct to leave a room before something terrible happens. She is the voice in the blood, not the mind, and when she calls, you listen. The inner Artemis. Psychologically, Artemis lives in the girl who refuses to play by the rules, the woman who walks away from love, that tries to own her, the instinct in all of us that says, this is not safe, run. But also in the one who guards herself too tightly, who cannot trust, cannot connect, cannot be touched without flinching. Artemis teaches independence, but her shadow is isolation. She is your wildness, your walls, your power to disappear. Cultural echoes. Artemis inspired more than statues. She lives in Katniss Everdeen, with her bow and distrust of power. Diana, Prince, Wonder Woman, based on her Roman form. Every girl who chooses freedom over romance. Every story where the woods are haunted, but sacred. Her temples at Ephesus, Delos, and Broron hosted rites of passage for young girls. There, they would dance, run, bleed, and transform. Because to worship Artemis was to be reborn, not as a wife, not as a servant, but as your own animal. And now, the moon wanes. The forest falls silent, because something else approaches. It's not instinct, it's not reason, it's not grace, it's rage. Pure divine rage. A god not of balance, but blood. Not of warning, but war. Next. Chapter 8, Ares. The god who loved war more than victory. He didn't care who won, he only cared that someone bled. Among the Olympians, Ares was never loved, not by the gods, not by the poets, not even by his own family, but in war, he was a god, not of strategy, not of glory, but of rage, chaos, the scream before the spear strikes. He was not a general, he was the battlefield. He didn't whisper to kings, he didn't scheme like Athena. He just charged, teeth bared, eyes wide, blood-soaked, and unashamed. Because Ares isn't the god of war, he is the god of what war feels like. Born to be hated, Ares was born of Hera, and perhaps only Hera. Some myths say she conceived him alone, as revenge for Zeus birthing Athena without her. If that's true, then Ares was born of spite, and he carried that bitterness like a weapon. Zeus despised him. He called Ares the most hateful of all gods, not because he caused war, but because he enjoyed it. To the gods of Olympus, Ares was vulgar, unrefined, too close to the animal. But mortals understood him. The battlefield is his temple. Ares had no great cults like Apollo, no oracles like Zeus, no festivals filled with hymns and praise. His worship was simple: the soldier who sharpened his blade before dawn, the prisoner who prayed for strength before death, the berserker who screamed his name in the middle of slaughter. Wherever there was blood, Ares was present. He didn't ask for worship, he just needed war. The lover of Aphrodite, and yet, in the middle of all this carnage, Ares loved the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, the embodiment of desire, married to Hephaestus, the deformed, shunned smith. But her true passion burned for Ares. Their affair was fire and violence. They met in secret, wrapped in silk and sweat. But nothing in Olympus stays secret. Hephaestus, humiliated, crafted an unbreakable net. One night, as the lovers lay tangled in each other, the net fell, trapping them mid-act. He called the gods to witness their shame. They laughed, mocked, ridiculed. But Ares didn't care. He wasn't ashamed of love. He wasn't ashamed of anything. He left Olympus for Thrace, his true home, a land of warriors and howling winds, because Ares was never meant for thrones. He was meant for the front lines. The fall before Athena. Ares and Athena are both gods of war, but they are not the same. Athena is strategy, wisdom, and precision. Ares is instinct, fury, and pain. And in every myth where they clash, Athena wins. In the Trojan War, Ares fought for Troy, Athena for the Greeks. When Diomedes, a mortal warrior, attacked Ares with Athena's help, Ares bled, a god wounded, screaming like 10,000 men, falling from the sky, crashing into the earth with thunder. And no one came to help him, because even among the gods, Ares was alone. Father of fear and panic, Ares had children, not just mortals, but concepts. With Aphrodite, sire than deimos, terror, phobos, fear, harmonia, harmony, the paradox, eros, desire. Sometimes Deimos and Phobos rode beside him into battle, cloaking armies in dread. They were not metaphors, they were real, and every soldier who trembled before the fight felt them, because Ares doesn't need to strike you. He just needs you to see him, and then watch yourself unravel. The siege of Thebes and the curse of Cadmus. Cadmus, founder of Thebes, slew a dragon sacred to Ares to atone. He served the god for 8 years. When he was freed, he married Harmonia, daughter of Ares and Aphrodite. But the wedding was cursed. The necklace she received, a gift from the gods, brought death to all who wore it, because Ares does not forget. Even when he forgives, he wounds. Cadmus later turned into a serpent, as if the dragon's curse had finally claimed him. Ares never needed to punish directly. He just needed time, and time always bled for him. The raw archetype of violence, says Ares, represents the raw masculine, primal, untamed, furious. He is the tower in the tarot when it's not divine revelation, but destruction. He is the shadow of the hero archetype, the soldier who fights because it's all he knows. In psychology, Ares lives in the man who bottles rage until it explodes, the fighter who only feels alive when bruised, the leader who uses violence not as a tool, but as a drug. He is every unspoken scream, every punch held back, and when he surfaces, he brings fire. Modern parallels: Ares is in every riot, bar fight, battlefield. He lives in the soldier with PTSD, haunted by images that never leave, the angry youth with no direction, the warlord who doesn't fight for country, but because it's all he's ever known. We call these things pathology, trauma, toxicity, but to Ares, they are honest. He doesn't dress up violence. He doesn't call it glory. He calls it what it is: blood, pain, power, me. And yet, beneath it all, there is a tragedy. Because Ares is not evil, he is unloved. The gods mock him, mortals fear him, but no one understands him. He doesn't seek war for conquest. He seeks it because, in the chaos, he feels alive. Because it's the only place he's allowed to be real. But what you're about to hear reveals the cruelty of that fate. Because while Ares ruled the battlefield, his own child would be raped, and justice would come, not from him, but from a trial, and it would forever mark a place of blood and judgment. Next, Chapter 8, Ares, the god who loved war more than victory, Part 2. Even gods can be helpless. And when that happens, They burned the world around them. Ares had many children, but one of them, Alcip, was sacred to him. She was not a warrior, not a destroyer. She was his daughter, and Ares, despite all his bloodlust, could love. But then came Hephaestus, son of Poseidon. He raped Alcip, and Ares did the only thing he knew. He found Hephaestus and killed him without trial, without warning, without remorse. This was not war. It was vengeance, and Olympus held its breath. Because when gods kill God's children, justice must answer. The first trial in history, the gods gathered on a rocky hill outside Athens. Zeus, Athena, Apollo, the entire pantheon. Ares stood before them, accused, and so began the first ever murder trial, not just in myth, but in the philosophical imagination of Greece. That hill became the Areopagus, the hill of Ares, the birthplace of Greek justice. Ares defended himself. He violated my daughter. I punished him. There were no witnesses, no laws, only gods, deciding what was right on the end. Ares was acquitted, but the stain remained, because for the first time, the god of war had to justify his violence, and that cut deeper than any blade. The difference between war and wrath in that trial lies Ares' greatest weakness. He is not strategic, he does not plan, he does not manipulate, he reacts. Where Athena calculates, Ares erupts. That is why she wins. That is why he bleeds. Ares is war without rules, rage without reflection. The strike before the thought. He is the ID. The fight-or-flight response. Necessary, but never respected. Thrace, the savage homelanders retreated from Olympus and lived most often in Thrace, a region known for its wild warriors and untamed customs. In Thrace, war was not shamed. It was celebrated. There, Ares was not mocked. He was honored. His altars were soaked in blood. His warriors wore wolfskins and drank from enemy skulls. His festivals were orgies of combat and fire. This was not civilized worship. It was devotion through violence and to Ares. That was more sacred than any hymn. The binding of Ares, but even a god of war can be humiliated. In one tale, the Olympian giants, Ots and Ephialtes, tried to storm Olympus. They captured Ares and locked him inside a bronze jar for 13 months. The god of war sat in silence, humiliated and forgotten. No one came, no one noticed, until Hermes freed him. Imagine the fury of a god, trapped, mocked, dismissed. Now imagine that fury when released. But Olympus did not change. They still saw Ares as an embarrassment, a brute, a weapon, never a god to be listened to, only used and feared. The eternal outsider, among the Olympians, Ares is the only one who doesn't evolve. Athena adapts, Apollo expands, Artemis withdraws, even Dionysus transcends. But Ares, he stays primitive, consistent, honest, and that is why he's feared, because he doesn't hide behind ideals. He is violence, without metaphor, and deep down, we all know he's real. The shadow we deny in Jungian psychology. Ares is the shadow. Self, the suppressed rage, the desire to hit, to scream, to dominate. The part of us we're told to bury. But when buried too deep, it explodes. He lives in the abused child who grows up to hurt others, the veteran who sees violence in every movement, the man who loves too much and can't let go. Ares does not want your admiration. He wants your honesty, because until you face him, you will never know your real strength or your real danger. The red planet in Roman times, Ares became Mars, and something strange happened. He was no longer a joke, no longer the fool of Olympus. He became the patron of empire. Roman legions prayed to Mars. Temples were built. Glory was his. The same god, now respected, because Rome understood. Violence is not just chaos, It's a tool, a system, a religion, and Mars became divine. Modern reflections Ares is in every boxing ring, where pain is ritual. Protest, where rage ignites change. War room, where death is calculated. He is the god of men who were never taught to cry, women who are told anger is unfeminine, children who learn early that love can be violent. He is not the cause of war. He is the part of us that lives in war and never comes back. But what comes next is his opposite, not calm, not reason, but craft, a god born broken, who learned to shape his wounds into invention, a god who builds while others destroy, and who married beauty, only to be betrayed by it. Next, Chapter 9, Hephaestus, the god who was thrown from heaven. The gods called him ugly, so he built a world they couldn't live without. Before he could walk, he was thrown from the heavens. Before he could speak, he knew pain. Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, god of fire and forge, entered Olympus, not with applause, but with rejection. To look at him was to see imperfection, to need him was inevitable. He forged the weapons of gods, crafted the armor of heroes, built machines before mortals even dreamed of them. But beneath every masterpiece he made, there was something broken not in his work, but in his soul. Thrown from the sky, there are two versions of his fall, and both begin with disgust. Version 1. He was born to Hera alone, conceived without Zeus, a divine act of feminine pride. But when she saw that the child was lame, she was ashamed. She threw him from Olympus. Version 2. He was born to both Hera and Zeus, but when he took Hera's side during an argument, Zeus cast him down in rage. Either way, the fall happened, and it broke him. He plummeted for an entire day and night, crashed into the ocean, and was rescued by Thetis and Eurynome, sea goddesses, who raised him in secret. There, in the depths, he learned to forge, while the other gods basked in divine praise. Hephaestus was in exile, hammering metal with hands that trembled from trauma. The crippled genius Hephaestus was the only Olympian god born imperfect. He walked with a limp. He spoke with effort. He looked nothing like Apollo or Ares. But while they postured and paraded, Hephaestus built. He forged automatons to assist him, machines of gold and bronze with human-like movement. He created palaces, thrones, weapons, even traps. His workshop burned with celestial fire, his mind with revenge, because they might have mocked his form, but they would kneel to his creations. The throne, that bit back when he was ready. Hephaestus crafted a magnificent golden throne for Hera. She sat upon it with delight, and then could not get up. The throne clamped shut, an unbreakable trap, forged by the very sun she discarded. The gods begged him to release her. He refused. Only Dionysus, with charm and wine, convinced him to return to Olympus drunk, broken, laughing, limping. Hephaestus walked into the palace he was once thrown from. He freed Hera, but he did not forgive. He stayed, and the gods learned. A crippled smith could hold every god hostage. All it took was a well-placed screw. The marriage that was a joke in strange twist. Hephaestus was given a reward, Aphrodite. Some say it was Zeus's bribe, others, Hera's attempt at repair. But Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, born from sea foam, was not given a choice. She married the ugliest of gods, and she hated it. She mocked him, betrayed him. She slept with Ares, the god of war, everything. Hephaestus was not. But the smith was no fool. He crafted an invisible net, caught them mid-act, and summoned the gods to see. The humiliated lovers lay tangled like flies in a web, and the gods laughed. They laughed at Ares, they laughed at Aphrodite, but they laughed loudest at Hephaestus, because even when he won, he was still the joke. The esoteric artisan Hephaestus is more than a builder. He is the alchemist, the wounded healer, the transformer of pain into power. In the tarot, he is the magician, not flashy, but foundational. In Jungian thought, he is the shadowed artisan, the part of the psyche that creates, to compensate for rejection. He represents the child deemed broken by society, the outcast who builds worlds from silence, the man who cannot charm, but can forge gods. He is the divine compensator. His body failed him, so he built machines that could not. Tools of the divine Hephaestus crafted, Zeus's thunderbolts, Achilles' armor, a masterpiece of protection and symbolism, Hermes' winged helmet and sandals, Apollo's chariot of the sun, and, in every work, there was something more than function. There was anger. There was longing. Each artifact was a monument to a god who didn't belong, yet made himself indispensable. Fire and volcanoes, Hephaestus's element, was not gentle hearth fire that belonged to Hestia. His was volcanic, raging, explosive, unseen beneath the surface, until it erupts. Mount Etna, in Sicily, was said to be his forge. When it smoked, mortals said Hephaestus was working. When it erupted, they said he was furious. He was honored not with hymns, but with caution, because you could not seduce Hephaestus. You could only respect the force that makes all things, and melts them too. The trap of perfection. There is a paradox to Hephaestus. He was flawed, but he created perfection. His pain became productivity. His loneliness became legacy. But at what cost? Every hammer strike was a scream. Every creation, a cry. Look at me. See me. Love me. But they only saw the product, never the man. But what you're about to hear reveals the god behind the mask. Because Hephaestus may have been ugly, but the next Olympian used beauty as a weapon. She didn't need to trap anyone. They trapped themselves just by looking at her. Next, Chapter 9, Hephaestus, the god who was thrown from heaven, Part 2. When the world mocks your pain, you turn it into something no one can ignore. Hephaestus was no longer just the god of fire. He was Olympus's indispensable creator, the one who made divine dreams real, a god whose name whispered through every artifact, even if he was never invited to the celebration. He was not beauty. He was not charm. He was function, form, and fire. But sometimes, function is more dangerous than power, because the one who builds your weapons can dismantle you with a single blow. The mastermind behind the gods might. Hephaestus didn't simply create. He understood. He knew the weaknesses of every god. He crafted chains that could bind Prometheus, even though Prometheus was a titan. He created Pandora, the first woman at Zeus's command, to unleash suffering upon the world. He forged the shoulder of Pelops after Demeter accidentally ate it, reassembling a boy like a puzzle. He engineered automatic gates of Olympus, long before mortals conceived of technology. This was not brute craftsmanship. This was godlike intelligence, a divine engineer centuries beyond his time. He didn't rule with a throne, he ruled with tools. The curse of Pandora. When Prometheus gave fire to mortals, Zeus grew vengeful. Hephaestus was ordered to mold a woman from clay, so beautiful, so alluring, that man could not resist her. He obeyed. But he knew what he was doing. He built her like a trap. Pandora was gifted by the gods, beauty from Aphrodite, music from Apollo, lies from Hermes, and from Hephaestus. Structure, strength, seduction, shaped like craftsmanship. When she opened the jar, not a box, as modern tales say, she unleashed sickness, death, envy, old age, everything mortals suffer. Began with a masterpiece. And somewhere, deep in his forge, Hephaestus felt the heat of guilt. Not for disobeying, but for obeying too well. The genius no one wanted. Hephaestus was the only Olympian who had to earn his place. He wasn't born to glory. He was cast out, mocked, humiliated, and only welcomed back when the gods needed him. He built their palaces. He repaired their armor. He healed their wounds. But did they ever love him? Did Aphrodite ever see him? Or was he forever the tool? Even in myths where he helps heroes like crafting Achilles' armor, Hephaestus fades into the background. because the spotlight was never his. It was the warrior, the killer, the beautiful. He was the hand behind the sword, never the name on the shield. Symbolism and esotericism in deeper traditions. Hephaestus is the wounded divine masculine, broken in form, whole in mind, isolated, but never idle. He is the archetype of the craftsman, the one who makes instead of speaks, the hermit. Genius ignored until the world collapses, and only he can fix it. The martyr of productivity, who works so others can shine in esoteric systems. He is the alchemical blacksmith, turning base metal into gold, the shadow magician, whose creations outshine his soul, the fire below, the one mortals must descend into to remake themselves. Hephaestus doesn't guide you. He breaks you, so you can be rebuilt. The flame inside the furnace. There's something deeply human about Hephaestus. He's the one who kept going after rejection, not because he was hopeful, but because he had no one else. He was his own fire, his own fuel, his own god, and every hammer strike was a heartbeat. You don't need to love me, but you will use what I make. That is what makes him terrifying. He holds power no one wants to acknowledge, but everyone depends on. And if he ever decided to stop, the gods would fall apart piece by piece. Temples and worship, though, not widely worshipped compared to Zeus or Apollo. Hephaestus had shrines in key places. Athens, where he was honored alongside Athena, brain and hand united. Lemnos, said to be the island where he landed after being thrown from Olympus Mount. Etna, his volcanic forge in Sicily, where the earth burned and trembled with divine industry. He was invoked by artisans, metalworkers, and engineers, not to win battles, but to build civilizations. He was the god behind bridges, temples, tools, cities. Without him, Olympus has no form, only flame. Modern archetypes. Hephaestus lives on today, in the inventor who's too awkward for social media, in the coder who builds billion-dollar software from a basement, in the disabled genius whose body is doubted, but whose mind is a furnace, in every person whose love is dismissed, but whose work is essential. He's not the one who gets the girl. He's the one who built the world she lives in. The god we owe everything to. Hephaestus is not glorious. He is not adored. He is not remembered first. But look around you. Technology, architecture, weapons, art. Without creation, the divine is useless. And without Hephaestus, the divine has no form. He is not just the god of fire. He is the god of making things real. But the next god needs no forge. He doesn't build love, he is love, born from sea foam, irresistible to gods and mortals alike. She ends wars with a glance, and starts them with a smile. Next, Chapter 10, Aphrodite, the goddess who made the gods fall in love. Desire is not a feeling, it is a force, and no one survives it unchanged. She stepped out of the sea, naked, perfect, terrifying. Even the gods could not speak. Aphrodite didn't need to lift a sword, didn't need to scream, didn't need to burn cities herself, because others did it for her. Kings gave up thrones, heroes lost their lives, gods bent their wills, not for conquest, but for beauty, for longing, for what they could never truly possess. She is not soft. She is not kind. She is the oldest and most dangerous power in existence. The desire that controls us all. The birth from violence. There are two stories of her origin. One is ancient. The other is safe. But safe stories don't make gods. The old version, the one whispered by Hesiod, is raw. Before time, there was Uranus, the sky. He ruled the heavens, but feared his own children. His son, Cronus, took a sickle and castrated him. From the severed genitals of Uranus, thrown into the sea, came a white foam, and from that foam, Aphrodite was born. Not born of love, but of lust and violence. She rose from the waters, near Cythera or Cyprus, glowing, smiling, radiant, and every god who saw her fell. The weapon of love. Aphrodite is not just a goddess of attraction. She is the goddess of compulsion. When she wishes, you desire. When she turns away, you ache. Even Zeus feared her, because she could make anyone fall in love, even him. So he tried to control her, married her to Hephaestus, the one god he thought no one would envy. But it didn't matter. Aphrodite's power was not confined by vows. She had lovers: Ares, the war god; Hermes, the trickster; Dionysus, the wild even mortals, like Anchises, with whom she bore Aeneas. The future founder of Rome. Aphrodite didn't ask for permission, because love never does. The judgment of Paris. This myth changed the world. 3 goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, competed for a golden apple, inscribed, "To the fairest." They asked Paris, a mortal prince of Troy, to judge them. Each offered him a gift: Hera, power; Athena, wisdom; Aphrodite, the most beautiful woman in the world. He chose Aphrodite, and she gave him Helen, queen of Sparta, already married. This act led to the Trojan War. Thousands dead, empires burned, and all because a mortal chose beauty over power and wisdom. But he didn't really choose. He never stood a chance. The goddess of contradictions, Aphrodite, embodies every paradox of love. She is gentle and merciless. She creates joy and jealousy. She is worshipped and blamed. Was the mother of Eros, or sometimes his twin. She is the lover of war, the enemy of restraint, the goddess who never suffers alone. She is present in the honeymoon and the heartbreak, in the wedding bed and the funeral, in the glance that changes a life, and in the betrayal that ruins it. Because desire is not pure, it is beautiful. But beauty, like fire, burns. Symbols and secrets. Aphrodite's symbols are soft: the dove, the rose, the scallop shell, the mirror, but each hides a blade. Doves are gentle until they fight for mates. Roses bloom, but their thorns bleed. Mirrors reflect, but also distort. She is the goddess of what we think we want, and the curse of getting it. An esoteric thought. She is the lovers in the tarot, not just romance, but choice. She is the anima, the feminine ideal that men chase but never understand. She is the alchemical force of union, both creation and destruction. She is not evil, but she is uncontrollable, and that is terrifying. Worship and cult centers. Aphrodite had powerful cults across the Mediterranean, Cyprus and Cythera, where she was born; Corinth, where priestesses practiced sacred rites of love; Athens, where she was linked to harmony in the city; Sparta, where she was not soft, but fierce, armored, even warlike. She was worshipped as Aphrodite; Urania, heavenly love; Aphrodite; Pandemos, love of the people; carnal and shared; Aphrodite; Areia, warrior lover; battle-born; Har, cult, included sacred prostitution, perfumed altars, and rituals of fertility. She was invoked at weddings, and sometimes before battles, because men don't just fight for land, they fight for love, or the illusion of it. Modern parallels. Aphrodite is everywhere, in ads that sell beauty, in celebrity worship, in the dating app swipe, that fleeting moment of digital attraction, in toxic romance, where love is possession, not connection. She is the influencer who controls millions with a glance, the muse who drives artists mad, the image in your head that no real person can match. And when she fades, she leaves behind emptiness, because she never wanted to be owned, only chased. But what's coming next is the one god she could never seduce. He doesn't fall in love. He doesn't play games, because his heart is always moving fast, sharp, and cunning. The messenger of gods, the trickster, the thief. Next. Chapter 10. Aphrodite, the goddess who made the gods fall in love. Part 2. If beauty is power, then Aphrodite is tyranny, not of the sword, but of the soul. There is no resisting her, only pretending to. The power of Aphrodite lies in anticipation, the desire just before touch, the illusion just before reality. Mortals dreamed of her. Gods fought over her. And philosophers tried, and failed, to explain her. Because she is not one thing. She is every craving, every obsession, every moment of weakness that feels like strength. To worship Aphrodite was to surrender. To live under her influence was to become something less, or something more. The wrath of Aphrodite, her vengeance, was not loud. It was personal. When Hippolytus, a young prince, refused to honor her and instead pledged his devotion to Artemis, Aphrodite did not forgive. She caused his stepmother Phaedra to fall violently in love with him. When Hippolytus rejected her, Phaedra accused him of rape and took her own life. Theseus, Hippolytus's father, cursed his son, who was dragged to death by his own chariot. Only then did Artemis reveal the truth. Aphrodite had engineered it all because she had been ignored. Not insulted, not defied, just ignored. That's all it takes. Anchises, the lover who feared her among all her mortal lovers, Anchises stands out. A shepherd on the slopes of Mount Ida, Aphrodite approached him not as a goddess, but disguised as a mortal maiden. They made love, and only afterward did she reveal her divinity. Anchises was terrified, for it was said that no man who lay with a goddess would remain whole. Aphrodite bore him a son, Aeneas, hero of Troy and future founder of Rome. But she warned Anchises never to speak of their union. When he did, Zeus struck him with a lightning bolt, crippling him. Even in love, Aphrodite left behind pain, because mortals aren't meant to handle divine desire. Pygmalion, and the ideal one of the most haunting myths linked to Aphrodite, is that of Pygmalion, a sculptor who became repulsed by real women. He created a statue so perfect, so idealized, that he fell in love with it. He prayed to Aphrodite to bring it to life. She granted his wish. The statue, named Galatea, became flesh. But the tragedy is silent. He didn't love a woman. He loved a dream. Aphrodite rewards desire, but only the illusion of it. The real person, often an afterthought. Aphrodite, and the feminine divine, she is often flattened into the goddess of love. But Aphrodite is not romance. She is seduction, obsession, jealousy, compulsion. She is the ancient understanding that beauty is not benign. She is Lilith, not Eve, the Empress, not the Virgin. She's the flame that attracts and incinerates. In Gungian thought, she is the dark anima, the projection of all things desired, feared, and misunderstood in the feminine. Men chase her, women compare themselves to her, but no one ever sees her fully, because she is a mirror, and what we see in her is only what we crave. The duality of love, Aphrodite, was often accompanied by two opposing forces. Eros, desire, Anteros, reciprocated love, because love, true love, requires balance. Aphrodite represents the imbalance, the ache that doesn't go away, the hunger that grows sharper the more it's fed. She is love unreturned, desire unmet, the beauty that mocks your ugliness. And when that energy dominates a person, or a culture, it leads to obsession, envy, violence. Wars are fought in her name, but never won. Rituals and temples' worship of Aphrodite was complex. It ranged from sacred prostitution in Corinth, where priestesses embodied her presence, to mystery cults in Cyprus and Cythera, with rites of sea, salt, and flame, to philosophical reinterpretations in Athens, where she was seen as a cosmic principle of harmony. Statues of her were everywhere, but always idealized. She was never allowed to be real. Her temples were filled with perfume, mirrors, offerings of flowers and jewelry, erotic poetry, and songs, yet behind all the sweetness was power. People didn't worship her to feel good, they worshipped her to survive desire. She in us. Aphrodite lives on in fashion and Instagram filters, the curated self, the performance of allure, plastic surgery, makeup, poses, lighting, and everyone chasing validation through aesthetics, but more deeply. She lives in every human moment of longing, the hunger for connection, the pain of not being enough, the ache of seeing someone and wanting them so deeply. You forget yourself. She is in the heartbreak, not after love fails, but when love never begins, a warning and a gift. Aphrodite teaches us this. To desire is to suffer, but to never desire is to never live. She reminds us of the price of connection and the danger of fantasy. She is not a goddess to worship blindly. She is a goddess to respect, to fear, to understand. Because once she touches your soul, you will never again be whole, only haunted. But now, we follow the wind, swift, clever, invisible. The god who travels between worlds. He steals, he jokes, he heals, he lies, and he knows the secret paths even gods won't speak of. Next, Chapter 11, Hermes, the trickster with the golden tongue. He speaks in riddles, walks in shadows, and moves faster than thought. If you see him, it's already too late. Before there was order, there was movement. Before law, there was chaos. And in that chaos, walked a boy, born at dawn, stole by noon, invented music by dusk, by nightfall. Hermes was already a god, not because of strength, not because of lineage, but because he understood one thing the others didn't. The world runs on speed, charm, and deception. You can be powerful, or you can be first. Hermes chose to be both. The cunning birth. Hermes was born to Maia, a nymph of the Pleiades, in a cave on Mount Selene. His father, Zeus. But unlike his half-siblings, Hermes wasn't born into thunder or vengeance. He was born into silence, and broke it instantly. Within hours of his birth, baby Hermes snuck from his cradle and stole 50 of Apollo's sacred cattle. But not just that. He reversed their hooves so they'd leave no tracks. He walked them backward, created new sandals to hide his prints, and then invented the lyre from a tortoise shell. When Apollo confronted him, Hermes played a song so beautiful that Apollo, the god of music himself, laughed and forgave him. Hermes gave him the lyre. Apollo gave him a golden staff. Balance was restored, but Olympus had just been introduced to a new force. The god of movement, the god of minds, the god of mischief, messenger, thief, and psychopomp. Hermes was not assigned one job. He took all of them. Messenger of the gods, winged sandals carrying secrets between Olympus and earth, patron of thieves and liars, because words can steal more than hands, protector of travelers, guiding lost souls through forests and between fates, inventor of language, weights, and measures, systems of civilization. But his most haunting role, the only Olympian who could enter the underworld freely. He escorted souls of the dead, not judging, not mourning, just delivering. He is the last voice you hear before crossing over, and he never looks back. The trickster, archetype in every mythology, there is a trickster. Loki in Norse myth, Coyote in Native American lore, Anansi, the spider in West African stories. Hermes is the Greek expression of this eternal force, the rule breaker who reshapes the game, the thief who teaches lessons, the fool who is actually the wisest one of all. He is chaos within order, a sanctioned rebel, and because he knows how to bend the rules, he can pass anywhere. Symbols and secrets. Hermes's symbols are as mysterious as he is. Caduceus, the winged staff with two snakes, often confused with the rod of Asclepius healing, but originally a symbol of negotiation and duality. Winged sandals, Talaria, speed, evasion, divine movement. Pedasos, the wide-brimmed traveler's hat, blending anonymity and charm. Tortoiseshell lyre, harmony from deception in esoteric terms. He is Mercury, the Roman counterpart, and the alchemical messenger between worlds and tarot. He echoes the magician and the fool beginnings. Journeys, illusions, in Jungian thought, he is the trickster archetype, the one who dismantles the ego so transformation can begin. Hermes is not chaos for destruction's sake. He is chaos as a bridge between the known and the unknown. Worship and cults. Hermes was honored across the Greek world, especially in Arcadia, his birthplace, as a pastoral god in Athens, as a god of commerce, language, and public discourse. In Hermes, sacred stone pillars placed at crossroads and doorways to protect and guide travelers would touch the Hermes for luck. Merchants prayed to him before deals. Thieves whispered his name under their breath before slipping into houses. Even philosophers like Socrates invoked Hermes not to steal, but to speak wisely. Because Hermes wasn't just fast, he was eloquent. And in a world where power is often decided by speech, Hermes ruled. The god of the in-between. Hermes lives between heaven and earth, life and death, lies and truth, gods and mortals. He never stays still. He never picks a side. He is the god of transitions, of adolescence, of journeys, of shifting identities. In that sense, Hermes is the most modern of the Olympians. He thrives in airports, markets, phones, wires, data. Every time something moves, Hermes is there, and where he goes, change follows. But what you're about to hear is the one story that even Hermes couldn't joke about. Because sometimes words aren't enough. Sometimes movement becomes madness, and the next god, he doesn't walk between worlds, he tears them apart. Next, Chapter 11, Hermes, the trickster with the golden tongue, Part 2. He was never just a thief. He was the god of slipping through cracks between lies and truth, life and death, sacred and profane. If you want to find Hermes, look where no one is watching. Hermes is the most human of the gods, not in weakness, but in adaptability. He is not divine because he commands storms or wages wars. He is divine because he understands people, understands how they move, what they want, what they fear. He doesn't overpower. He outsmarts. And in a world shaped more by transactions than by thrones, that's the most dangerous power of all. The invention of words. Hermes didn't just steal Apollo's cattle. He created the first spoken lie, the first joke, the first excuse, the first song. Language was his invention, and with it, he invented civilization. Because nothing separates mortals from beasts more than the ability to name, to negotiate, to persuade. Hermes gave the world speech, trade laws, literature, poetry, and then he gave them loopholes, because every system is flawed, and Hermes lives in the flaw, the god of commerce and crime. What is the difference between a merchant and a thief? Consent. Hermes governs both. He watches over honest trade and black markets, contract signings and forged documents, bankers and smugglers. His realm is exchange of goods, of words, of souls. He doesn't care if it's fair, he only cares if it flows. Because once movement stops, once the current dies, death begins. To Hermes, even crime is life, because it means something still moves. The liminal god Hermes belongs. Two thresholds, not inside, not outside, doorways, crossroads, dreams, secrets. That moment before a choice is made, when anything is possible, is when he appears. He's the god of adolescence. Not adults, riddles, not answers, journeys, not destinations. In ancient Greece, Hermes were placed at intersections to guard travelers. People would touch them, whisper prayers, leave offerings, asking for safe passage. But Hermes doesn't guarantee safety. He guarantees change. You'll get where you're going, but you won't be the same. Dreams and divination. Hermes wasn't just fast. He moved between the conscious and the unconscious. He brought messages in dreams, sometimes comforting, sometimes cryptic. He whispered to prophets. He visited the sleeping dot. In one myth, Hermes carried the wand of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and could lull entire cities into slumber. He is the one who slides between wake and rest, bringing visions, voices, symbols, and when he speaks, the dream changes. Sometimes it becomes prophecy, sometimes madness, the psychopomp guide of souls. This is where Hermes becomes terrifying, because while others gods represent life or death, Hermes is the bridge. He doesn't judge the dead. That's Hades. He doesn't mourn them. That's Persephone. He simply takes their hands and leads them away. In Roman myth, he becomes Mercury, the silver-tongued god who wears death like a cloak but never lets it cling to him. He moves between the land of the living, the shades of the underworld, and sometimes back again. He is the first and last god you meet. Alchemical Mercury in esotericism and alchemy. Hermes becomes even deeper. He merges with Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, forming Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes. From this figure comes the Hermetic tradition, which shaped Western magic, astrology, alchemy. The occult Hermes is the source of the phrase, as above, so below. He is the intermediary dot between divine and human, mind and matter, chaos and creation. He represents quicksilver, elusive, mercurial, always moving. To understand Hermes is to understand the mutability of truth, the slipperiness of meaning. The illusion of control. He is the patron of seekers, not finders. Modern manifestations. In today's world, Hermes is everywhere. He is the delivery driver, the stock trader, the hacker, the influencer who says everything and means nothing, the dreamer, the hustler, the player. He lives in emails, airports, cryptocurrency, satire. He is the god of the information age, where data moves faster than wisdom, where words spread faster than truth, where charm becomes currency, and Hermes is wealthy beyond imagination. Why he matters in a world obsessed with power and permanence. Hermes is the reminder that nothing lasts, that movement is divine, that truth is malleable, that endings are doorways. He is the whisper in your ear, telling you, it's okay to break the rule. If you understand the game better than anyone else, he is not evil, but he is not safe, and if you try to trap him, you'll find nothing but wind and laughter. And now, we reach the last Olympian, the wildest, the loudest, the god of madness and miracles, born twice, worshipped with wine and frenzy, feared and adored by mortals. His followers see visions, his rituals dissolve the self, and his truth cannot be spoken, only felt. Next, Chapter 12, Dionysus, the god who was torn apart and reborn. He comes with ivy in his hair, a smile on his lips, and madness in his wake. Those who resist him go insane. Those who accept him are never the same. He is not like the others. He was not born on Olympus. He did not rise with thunder or fire. He came from pain, from exile, from death, and yet he returned, laughing, dancing, bleeding. Dionysus, the god of wine, the god of ecstasy, the god of losing control. But beneath the grapes and the songs lies a truth so deep it cannot be spoken. He is the god of transcendence, and to follow him is to shatter your ego, your rules, your mind, not with punishment, but with pleasure. Twice-born Dionysus' origin is unlike any other Olympian. He was born once and died, then born again. His mother, Semele, was a mortal woman. She was seduced by Zeus, who came to her in secret. But Hera, jealous and cruel, tricked Semele into asking Zeus to show himself in his full divine form. He did, and she burned to ash. But in her womb, a child still lived. Zeus took the unborn Dionysus and sewed him into his own thigh, and from there, months later, birthed him again. He is the god of rebirth, the god of survival, the god who walks out of fire, smiling. The wanderer Dionysus was never welcome in Olympus at first. The other gods saw him as strange, too human, too wild. So he wandered through India, Asia Minor, Egypt, and back to Greece. Wherever he went, he brought wine, music, madness, freedom. He was followed by Maenads, frenzied women in ecstatic trance, satyrs, half-men, half-goat, revelers, Selene, nymphs, actors, and outcasts. He didn't conquer with weapons. He invited people to lose themselves, to dance, to see the divine in ecstasy. And once they did, they were never the same. The god of ecstasy. Ecstasy means to be outside oneself, and that is Dionysus. He dissolves boundaries between man and woman, human and beast, sacred and profane, living and dead. His festivals, the Dionysia, were the origin of Greek theater. Why? Because Dionysus is the god of transformation. In drama, actors become other people. In ritual, worshippers become divine. In wine, the mind becomes unbound. He is the loss of control, not as failure, but as liberation. The madness of Pentheus, most terrifying myth of Dionysus, is not about joy. It's about what happens when you resist him. Pentheus, king of Thebes, banned Dionysus's cult, called it degenerate, mocked the god. So Dionysus arrived, disguised as a mortal priest. He seduced the women of the city into joining his rituals. He lured Pentheus with promises of forbidden sights, and when Pentheus, dressed as a woman, crept into the forest to spy, the Maenads saw him, including his own mother, driven mad by Dionysus. They thought he was a wild animal. They tore him to pieces, and only afterward did his mother realize she was holding her son's head. That is Dionysus's wrath, not fire, not lightning, but the undoing of your mind. The symbols of Dionysus. Every one of his symbols is beautiful, until it isn't. Ivy, ever-growing, wrapping, choking vine, intoxicating, invasive thyrsus. A staff tipped with a pinnacone, soft but hiding power. Wine, sweet, then burning masks, playful, then unsettling. He is the god of masks, because every person wears one. Dionysus doesn't ask you to remove it. He rips it off and shows you what's beneath. Dionysus and the shadow. In psychological terms, Dionysus is the shadow. Not evil, but everything repressed. He is repressed emotion, suppressed desire, hidden madness. The part of yourself you refuse to see. Jung wrote that what you deny in yourself becomes your fate. Dionysus is that fate. And he doesn't knock, he breaks down the door. The esoteric meaning. Dionysus was not always seen as wild. In Orphic traditions, he was a cosmic savior. The Orphics believed he was born as Zagreus, son of Persephone and Zeus, and destined to inherit the cosmos. But the Titans tore him apart as a child. Zeus, in rage, incinerated them, and from their ashes, humans were born, part divine, part monstrous. Dionysus was later reborn, and in this view, his cult was about returning to that divine part within ourselves, through music, through ritual, through ecstasy. Dionysus is not just wine, he is spiritual resurrection, the god of the soul. But what happens when a god's touch frees you? Too much. What's left after the ego dies? Who are you when there's no mask, no name, no form? The answer lies in what comes next. Next, chapter 12, Dionysus, the god who was torn apart and reborn, part 2. He doesn't demand obedience. He invites surrender, not to him, but to what you've hidden. The chaos, the hunger, the longing. Dionysus is the god who burns the mask, so the soul can finally breathe. Let's go deeper, because Dionysus is not just the god of wine and revelry. He is the god of contradiction, of ecstasy and terror, freedom and madness, joy and dismemberment. To understand him fully is to walk into the forest, leave your name behind, and not come back the same. The theater of the soul. Dionysus gave humanity theater, not as entertainment, but as ritual. The great Dionysia in Athens wasn't just a festival. It was a sacred experience. For days, thousands gathered. They drank, fasted, prayed, wept, and then they watched stories unfold. Tragedies, to grieve comedies, to laugh, satyr plays, to confront the wild. The actors wore masks. The chorus sang. The boundaries between audience and actor, self and other, began to blur. It was not passive, it was transformational. You didn't go to the theater to be amused. You went to be changed. The cult of Dionysus, like the structured rituals of Apollo or Zeus, the cult of Dionysus was wild, emotional, and female-led. It spread through the forests, the mountains, the outskirts. It attracted women seeking release from social bonds, slaves, foreigners, and the marginalized philosophers. Seeking divine intoxication in his rites, worshippers drank wine, danced, in trance, shouted his names Eleutherius, the liberator Bromios, the thunderer Iacchus. The joyous cry they wore fawn skins, carried Thyrsi, let their hair down. In a world of rules, Dionysus was the break, a holy madness, a divine letting go, opposed by power, but not everyone accepted him. The Athenian aristocracy, Spartan militarists, and Roman patricians all feared his cult. Why? Because it was uncontrollable. It gave power to those without it. It dissolved social roles, hierarchies, and shame. To them, Dionysus wasn't a god. He was a threat. In Rome, the Senate outlawed the Bacchanalia, fearing plots and rebellion. But they could not erase him, because Dionysus is not a doctrine. He is a force. Every time someone rebels, breaks through repression, or loses themselves in art, dance, love, he is there. Dionysus versus Apollo. In Greek thought, the world was divided between Apollo, order, reason, light, Dionysus, chaos, emotion, shadow, but they are not enemies. They are complements. Friedrich Nietzsche explored this in The Birth of Tragedy, arguing that true art requires both. Apollo gives structure, Dionysus gives soul. Without Dionysus, life becomes sterile. Without Apollo, it becomes madness. But together, they create beauty. Real, living, painful, transcendent beauty. Dionysus in the Psyche and Jungian psychology. Dionysus represents individuation through surrender. He is the breakdown of the ego, not to destroy the self, but to reveal the true self. He is the voice in you that whispers, there's more. The longing you feel in music, dance, and poetry. The ache when you realize logic alone won't save you. The madness that comes when you try to cage your soul for too long. And when he arrives, he comes with a smile and a warning. If you follow me, you won't be the same, but you'll finally be real. Rebirth through death. Dionysus was torn apart in myth. By titans, by humans, by fate. But he always came back. This is his secret. You can't kill what is true. You can only delay it. He is the part of you that will not stay buried. The trauma you avoided, the desire you suppressed, the joy you've forgotten how to feel, Dionysus brings it all back. And yes, it breaks you. But then, he pours wine in your hands, places a crown of ivy on your head, and leads you into the night, where you are no longer a prisoner. You are divine. Dionysus today is alive in music festivals, theater stages, nightclubs, psychedelic ceremonies, artistic movements, and every moment someone says, I just want to feel something real. He is the reason people cry at songs they don't understand. Why dancers close their eyes. Why actors lose themselves in roles. Why some truths are only spoken while drunk. He is what religion fears, and what salvation might require. He is chaos with meaning, pleasure with power, madness that heals, and if you let him in, he will shatter your world. But what he leaves behind is real life, not performance, not survival, not numbness, but life, burning, bleeding, breathing. And so, the circle closes. 12 gods, 12 truths, 12 mirrors held to the soul of humanity, from Zeus with his lightning to Dionysus with his laughter. They are not just characters in myth, they are forces inside us, our fears, our drives, our instincts, our dreams. To know them is to know ourselves. To walk with them is to live more deeply, and though their temples may crumble, their voices remain in stories, in symbols, in the spaces between silence, because the gods never left, they just changed names, and the real question isn't whether they exist, it's whether you're ready to meet them.